Uh, Welcome, one and all, to the FE7 cast, aka FAE7, Game Designers Tell All. My name is Justin. With me on the call here is my lovely co-host, Dondon151. Say hi, Dondon.
Hello, casuals.
As I was hoping he would say. Alright, so
Here's the thing.
what was that?
He said the thing.
He did say the thing.
Aha.
What we're going to do today is we're going to go through the changes of FE7 and how we arrived at the decisions and how the meta shifted from the vanilla FE7 meta to our intended meta, and then we can talk about what we learned throughout the race itself, the strats that people came up with, and how we would reconsider the meta now versus what we intended. So, all right. So I think this was marked. We have a mini tier list that has the. This is essentially the vanilla FE7 roles list. You know, you can see the carries up there at the top. Florina, Heath, Hawkeye, Dart. I understand it's hard to read. Just bear with us. It's fine.
Yeah, Justin, is it possible for you to expand the window slightly and then maybe trim some of like the gears from the side
Oh yeah, I could do that. That's
so that you can expand it more vertically?
Oops,
too.
yeah, that's a good idea. Well, it's gonna get bigger when we do the when we add tiers for FE7, right? So
Maybe.
no,
I mean,
it will.
There's a lot of like.
It will.
You got two tiers that have 2 rows, right? You gotta have faith.
I'm looking at the FE7 tier list right here to my right. There are a lot more rows. So, okay, but we can condense like 3 into one tier, so and stuff like that. So yeah.
Chat will have to pay the price then. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about first the foundation of the hack itself, some of the macro concepts, and I did in my opening presentation talk about 5 foundational changes that kind of everything else fits within. So the first thing is that I really wanted to disrupt the vanilla meta in actually every chapter, which I think we did successfully. And also shift around the viability of units such that we had new carries and more units came out of that worthless tier. So did you have any goals, Dondon, when you approached the process with me?
I just wanted to make a meta that was relatively balanced and nothing that was like, okay, this is definitively 100% the best unit and the meta's broken.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, that was definitely a strong consideration. I know now, we know that from the relay last year, like there are carry options in Fate's Revelation, that could compete with like Jacob in that DLC driven format where you can like reclass into Dread Fighters and Dark Flyers. I just didn't like the idea that like one carry was just like way better, and so that's why I really tried to put up guardrails that would help us get changes we could use to build a balanced meta. I think a lot of people looked at this and didn't have that idea from a team perspective, which makes sense. The closest things that people probably associated this with were like the FE8 PME Chaos Race, which ended up being like, in my opinion, Gilliam is just like far and away the best carry. And then like the sabotage races that Mecha and Raisins have done. And the goal there is to like a team incorporates a change and they try and gain an advantage by knowing their change, but the other person doesn't know it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like I felt that teams would probably approach their edit selection to be like slightly geared towards that result. Maybe some teams more than others, depending on like the personalities involved. You
Yeah,
know,
they tried.
throwing
They
shade at
tried.
certain people, right? To have like one specific change that's like, okay, like we know why we're changing it, and so maybe that would give us an
Yes.
advantage.
Yes.
And so I wanted to avoid that being a centralizing thing because this is the first event of the 4-leg relay
Mm-hmm.
where every result ends up mattering, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't want to have like a completely disparate result between teams so that it's like an insurmountable lead for others to overcome in games 2, 3, and 4.
Exactly. Yeah, there was a strong desire to keep things competitive. Now I did say the caveat was like at the point of publishing the hack to the racers for them to start prepping with it and coming up with their strategies, it was like I don't know if the meta will end up being as balanced as we feel like it could be. And that also
Yes.
was dependent on the
Yes.
teams and their discovery. But that was all we could really, be responsible for. So
Yes, I mean there are certain factors outside of our control, or like without me doing an FE6 level play testing of everything, being like, okay, this is balanced in the end. Like I'm not putting in that much time to play testing this stuff, right?
yeah,
But there were enough things that were changed where I was like, it could really shake things up, and there is definitely the potential of something being introduced that really breaks things apart. But of the things that are like more surface level or like more easy to see, um, I felt like we did a pretty good job at mitigating that from being broken.
yes,
And then also the other factor is that you have to take into account the economy and the number of changes, right? Because the spirit of this is we still wanted to implement the suggestions that people had submitted, and then not to like make too many edits that we decided to do,
yes,
to basically make it kind of like it's less chaos for them and then more just like Dondon and Justin made a meta for you guys, have fun, right? Like certainly, if you gave me free reign to implement like an unlimited number of changes, I could have adjusted like a number of different things still that I
yes,
felt maybe could have like
yeah,
switched things up even more. But ultimately, like there's a point to which I should be allowed to obsess over what I can change.
yeah,
And then you also like made a lot of changes that were overall like for the better, right? And were well
yeah,
designed. And so I felt like I did not want to also like creep into that space, right? Because it
yeah,
was like, okay, no, Justin is the architect of the fancy things, right? And I'm just gonna be like the architect of some of the overarching things
yeah,
more so.
yeah. And I appreciated that, and I felt like we struck a good balance, with trying to make sure that we both played those roles and we've allowed the players to like have their input, but still kind of like close the circle really. So they provided half of the circle of half the meta, and like
Hmm.
for us to like connect the dots, and then like whatever was left that was like open space that felt unbalanced, like try and close that circle and create like
Hmm.
a perceived balanced meta at the time of design, at least. So yeah. So let's talk about first, just to establish for chat who may or may not know, um, the basic premise was that we started with vanilla FE7. 4 teams could each submit up to 5 edits each, um, and the goal was for us to approve at least 2 edits per team, and then that would be part of the circle, and then our edits would enclose the circle for the created meta. So I was on purpose very liberal with my definition of one edit. So okay, so let's talk about the edits, and we'll use the number 1 foundational edit right now to kind of demonstrate the format basically of the changes. So here you can see the target type was like that was just something I made for like Oh, you can't see my cursor. How do I?
Like, how do you define an edit, right? Like, what
Yes.
are you changing,
Can you see? You can't see my
etc.
cursor. Oh wait. Oh, that's not the window. I'm an idiot. Okay. It's this one. Okay. There we go. Okay. Justin James. Okay. Yeah. So, character. All right. Actually, let me. That's fine. All right. So character. Yeah. Like that. That was just like what type of thing. So it just made filtering easier for me to like also process it mentally. And then target specified, it was like my one quote unquote requirement was like the target can be one thing, and the thing was like very loosely defined, and the number of ways you could change the thing were like very very loosely defined. And like my one rule of thumb was like if people wanted to make a billion changes, I would like start curbing them back to like, okay, well, I'm probably not going to approve like these 7 parts, but like these 4 parts seem pretty good. And so like I worked with teams in a lot of ways to try and like not get changes that were too hard to work with, basically, to have a closed circle of a balanced meta. But I did define like all of the changes on one target as one edit, basically. So this was a foundational change. Number 1, I said there were 5. Number 1 is FE is FE7. FE6 FE replaces Hector. So Donna, why don't you talk about like the impact that this had?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were reviewing the changes, right? First we kind of look at them independently and get our
Yes.
impressions as to, you know, what changed about the game or the meta, and then like after that we talked about them, and so this is like a pretty huge change for FE7 because FE7's vanilla meta is defined by Hector soloing the game until you get your carry, and then carry takes over from Hector, and the way that FE7 is designed, there's like 2 chapters that account for a lot of potential time loss. And if your carries can handle those 2 chapters, then that's what makes them carries compared to like otherwise decent units. So those 2 chapters are Crazy Beast, chapter 25, and Victory or Death, which is chapter 32
Yes.
in Hector mode. And that's why you see in the vanilla list, the tier list or the role list, that the 4 carries are 2 early-ish flyers, right? With good stats, and 2 berserkers who have the ability to carry Hector, dart with a little bit of help, and also walk over sea, rivers, and mountains. So they are really good at those 2 chapters, and everything else, I mean, they're like roughly at least on parity. So compare that to units like Kent and Sane, who are paladins, otherwise considered to be just kind of like a strong class, but those units do not do well in those 2 chapters, and so that's why they are not prime carries. Like, they have enough time loss in those 2 chapters alone that if you competed at top level, those units would never be able to post a competitive time unless the top tier units got stat screwed, right? Even if Ken and Sane got stat blessed, like, they still would not be able to do it. Like, they have to rely on basically the main carries crashing and burning. So because your carries are limited to those 4 units, right, they have vastly different availabilities. Florina joins pretty early, and so her use case is a little bit like different. But Dart, Heath, and Hawkeye all join like well into the mid game. Like, Dart is what, chapter 18?
Mm-hmm.
No, 19. 19's Dread Isle, right?
Yeah, 19.
So
yeah.
that's like, you have to subtract 10 from everything because Hector Mill starts at chapter 11. But Dart, it basically shows up in chapter 9. Heath shows up in 22, so chapter 12. And then Hawkeye in chapter 13 in a game that lasts 23 chapters. So like over the halfway point for 2 of them, and almost at the halfway point for the other. And Hector is just pretty strong, like pretty OP, bulky, good offenses. And one of the main issues with FE7 is that how much time you end up losing in that early mid game really depends on if Hector gets screwed in his speed, because he doesn't start out very fast. And so if he hits a speed benchmark, then you're just cruising, and you can gain a lot of time on someone who doesn't hit that speed benchmark. And Hector's very centralizing to a draft race because he can pick up a 1-2 range weapon, a hand axe, just go burst through everything, and then hand off to the carry.
Yeah.
So what's different about Fa, right? Fa number one does not have 1-2 range, and number two, her weapon does not have unlimited uses. You're limited to a 30-use Dragonstone, and then once that's broken, she can no longer attack, and she actually loses a lot of stats too once that's broken. So you really want to break that. So think about like if Hector had a Wolf Bale, and that's all he's allowed to use for the entire game. That's kind of like the idea behind it, and that means that like you have to hand off from your Lord to someone else much earlier. You cannot afford to go all the way until the mid game. And solo with the Lord. It's kind of like some middle ground between like vanilla draft race and now what people are doing with FE8 with the no handouts races where the Lord gets banned pretty early.
Yeah.
So that was what I thought was sort of like the biggest change, and also the change that like I vibed with the most. Right, I was like, yeah, this is like really good insight. Whoever decided to submit this.
Yeah, and that team was Drafting in the Skies, which they explained in the server today. So yeah, so I definitely wanted something. Like I was looking for an edit that would impact Hector being carry viable. Like, I just had him up here in the free carry level combat, per the handoff. And like just change that into something else. And this edit was so good. It was way better than anything I could have come up with on my own. I'm so glad they submitted it. I knew it was a winner as soon as I saw it. There were other few good Hector types of edits that I saw, but this one was like definitely the best. The 30 uses, the budgeting, but like good and like still stays contributing. And if you just like it changed the game of like, well, you're never really worried about FAE stats. You're just kind of worried about the budgeting of the Divine Stone and finding like worthwhile places of, yes, this is a situation where I should use FAE because FAE can save time and I have allocated uses here. That made this so much more interesting, in my opinion, for a free unit to be like that.
Yeah, definitely introduces a lot of decision making in that regard too.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I did the whole FE6 like meta creation elaboration sort of thing. Right. I was accustomed to having to deal with like a one range lock Lord, and sort of like the impression it left on me about like how it changed the routing. Right. And so this is like taking that, but even a step further.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels similar to Mur, except unable to kill the fire dragon. Unless she does. So that's the thing, is that she's still good in endgame. It's so good. Oh, it's such a great change. Okay. Yeah. So moving on to the next foundational change. And once we hit the foundational changes, we'll start speeding up. But I want to make sure that we lay the foundation, and then we can like speed through everything else. So, okay, so the next foundational change was actually this one. So the target is floor tiles, and change the movement cost of floor tiles for 255 for all flying classes. That was by Team Raising Canes, and this one was huge to disrupt the vanilla carries. So talk about that, Dondon.
Yeah, so that immediately knocks two of the 4 carries out, and then also like in vanilla meta, I think Fiora is pretty borderline as a viable carry too, so she gets knocked out of contention for that. Flyers are generally just really OP in like non-dismounting Fire Emblem and like non-Shadows of Valencia Fire Emblem, because their drawbacks are really not significant at all. Oh no, they take extra damage from bows. Like, I know people gripe on FE7 for like, 2x damage is not threatening enough, but like even 3x damage, I mean, look at FE8, right? Like, no one cares about the 3x damage modifier when you're doing a draft race and your carry is like, triples the stats of the average enemy that they face.
Mm-hmm.
So, this basically reduces them to utility at best, but the utility is also pretty significant because of the aforementioned Crazed Beast and Victory or Death, um, like kind of choke points when it comes to timing. Because after I saw this change and I looked at the maps, I was like, there's still a lot of use that you can get out of having a flyer there. It's just that you literally cannot use them for like every chapter, every game from the main combat role. Um, so that's why I really like this change. It did have some kind of like unusual consequences with regard to like rescue staff
Hmm.
placement and targeting and stuff like that, which was not foreseen. But I don't think it ended up being broken either. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think making flyers utility based definitely increases the number of drafting choices that become uh, relevant, right? Because one of the issues now with a lot of games draft based metas is that drafts stop mattering after the second or third pick, or sometimes even like the first pick. It really doesn't matter. Um, so if you can draft a flyer for utility, then that's like definitely a you know post first round pick that you make everyone consider.
Yeah. All right, and so some of the members of Team Raisin Canes are in chat here. Cool Nate, Raisins. They're talking about how they wanted to make flyers utility based, not carry based. And yeah, Raisins. Yeah, as he says there in chat, like their original idea was to make plains tiles. So like literally the tile that he's standing on right now costs 255 for flyers. So like rather the inverse. But like if you can see right here, like you can string together many tiles in a row here, like on an outdoor map where they're not plain tiles. Like you can actually still move pretty far outdoor maps with flyers. So then it would just be like, well, they can still carry indoors, and you could like probably figure out a way to do a lot of vanilla strategies using non plains tiles. So in some areas,
Mhm.
like yeah. So
I definitely,
go ahead.
I definitely also like thought for a while after this change. I was like, is there are there loopholes that exist? Like, can you still somehow scrounge a way to cheese the indoor maps and get around the limitation that this imposes? And I thought about like, okay, Battle Before Dawn. I don't really see a way to cheese that with a flyer carry, right? If you try to force a flyer carry, um, and then like. What I mean that was a big one, but we also we knew we were talking that like Knight of Farewells is going to be played, and that one like you can't attack Sonya with a flyer because that's all
Yeah.
floor tiles too, so those are going to be choke points. Pretty sure Dragon's Gate you could kind of do like you just have Fa drop off at the very end and try to kill Darren. Um, Yeah, 17. Although 17, like, I mean, you weren't doing that with a flyer carry anyway, right? Even if Lorena existed. Yeah, in Final Chapter, you could not do. Although we had to make sure that, like, in vanilla FE7, you could just like Athos solo most of it too, right? So that plays into other changes as well. I guess like Sands of Time, you know, you're a little bit limited as to what you can do. Um, so there were enough kind of like stops there where I felt like, yeah, you probably cannot cheese it and work around its expected impact.
Yeah, exactly. This is an example of like them not being a carry, but you could do this. And then you could go like, "Oh, hey Cameron," or sorry, "Hey Maxine, what's up?" And you could just off him. You can grab the boots if you had a key, just saying. That's an option.
Yeah, yeah. But then how do you get to like Ursula,
Oh you
right?
can't. They can't do that.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. So, but there were some fun rescue things that Raisins and Co came up with there, which you can view in the VOD. We won't have to go over that today. But yeah, so 100%. You can see then here, I've moved them down here into the flyer utility carry. Um, so Okay, so then the next change that was foundational was this one. Berserker, in clear sky weather, change movement cost to all tiles to match warrior class movements. So in rain or snow, Berserker movement remains unchanged. But like, there really are no Berserker tiles in rain or snow in the entire game. So they basically just move like warriors, but they just like, only have axes. So, talk about that change,
Yeah.
Dondon. Where are we putting these guys now?
Well, so I feel like the clear skies part was mostly just to prevent you from editing like a million different things
No,
that
no,
are
no. It
completely
was
useless.
no, it was So okay, actually, what I should say is that the original version of this was Berserkers and Weather have it takes them four it takes them like 4 movement costs to move through any tile, but they can move through any tile, which would include like wall tiles. And I was like, guys, this is ridiculous. Like, uh,
Yeah.
but it was more of like I didn't want to like nerf the good guys into the ground to change the meta. I still wanted them to be usable. And so like after my feedback, the Fleam team came back with this adjustment to make the Berserkers still like secondary type of viable, but no longer carries.
Yeah. So they are no longer, fulfilling the role that they were intended to in Crazed Beast and Victory of Death. Right? We always go back to those chapters. So I think we kind of write them off as carries, because otherwise they're just infantry units, right? It's not like they have really significant advantages. Like Dart requires some training. Hawkeye has like big stats, but like if they can't move over rivers or peaks, then why would you use them instead of like, I don't know, Isadora? I mean, they got like stats aside, right? But like if you had a unit that was identical to Hawkeye and um, already didn't have uh, like Peak Walk and Water Walk to begin with, like there's no difference between the two. Yeah, Nate is
Uh,
cool. I agree too that like I know from experience that the bishop is like really lame. Um, so that's also another thing that factored into like, yeah, I think the utility is definitely still existent because you can just pure water and probably take on uh, that that bishop at base. I mean, in my like vanilla dart routing, where I do the whole dart Fiora promote Fiora at level 10 sort of thing, right? I have Fiora take on the uh, Southwest, followed by baiting Pascal off and then seizing his gate too, and she's at like base stats plus promo, plus like a couple points here and there because of the stats that she gained a level up. So I definitely knew that they retained utility in Crazed Beast in multiple ways too. You're not limited to just flying to the bishop fort. Um,
yeah, you could go this way. So
yeah. So I mean, pretty cut and dry. Knocks the berserkers from their throne, right?
yeah, so I put
Like
them down here in strong combat.
kind of disappointing in the sense where like now they just had nothing better to offer than just kind of hitting kind of hard. But in a draft race meta, you can't have everyone be top and amazing. So
Yeah.
fair enough, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the next change I want to talk about then is, so the fourth overall change that was foundational was this one. Every bow that can normally attack at 2 range can now also attack at 1 range.
Yes. Okay. So on its face, I really don't like this change because I also don't like changes to bows and ROM hacks where it's like, oh, everything's 1-2, right? Or even like the ROM hack classic of short bows are 1-2 and the other bows are like 2 range, because that kind of takes the character away from bows. And it also makes them like a really centralizing weapon type because like an iron bow becomes a javelin plus, like a not heavy, very accurate javelin. I think it's like javelin plus 20 hit or something like that. And then like a steel bow basically becomes a short spear plus. Silver bow becomes like tomahawk plus. And then if you get like a killer bow, right, like you just have a crit 1-2 range weapon, so you're basically like a berserker with the hand axe but twice as much crit. And what else? Like you can brave bow. at 1-2 range, you know. So it's super good, right? And in fact, the OG version of this change, I believe, had all bows give a passive like plus strength and plus defense too. Like it was crazy.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
it was +2 defense, like yeah, plus 2 strength. Yeah, 1-2 range. Yeah, it was there was a lot. Let me see if I can actually read it off here. If I can find the original version.
yeah, it was like an absolutely insane change, and legitimately. So Justin told me afterwards that the point of that change was to nerf flyers, which, after the floor tile nerf, which we felt was appropriate, was good, just gratuitous, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And because like I saw this in the context of all the other changes submitted, and I didn't remember like who submitted what, I actually thought that the point of this change was to make Rebecca OP because I knew this one was submitted by Castle's team, right? So I was like, okay, Castle's just gonna make Rebecca OP because that's Castle.
Yeah, and I was like, no, like it was from the front facing fiends, and I think yeah, like the idea was that they wanted to nerf like flyer training and like make it more dangerous for flyers. I'm close to seeing where it is. Where the hell is it? Okay, so it was. Okay, all right. So it was add 2 might. Sorry, add 2 might. Holder gains +2 defense and triple effectiveness, and you get the 1 range added. So it was a lot, and it was like yeah. Once we got the floor tile submission, I was like, that's it. That's the way that flyers are nerfed. That's so creative. Like we got to go with that. They don't need more nerfs. we don't need every you know enemy archer out here being able to gun them down in one shot. So
Mhm. Yeah. So I think part of the reason why we ended up going with this modified change as a foundational change was I don't remember all the submissions off the top of my head, but I remember like we wanted to pick a certain number of changes from each team, and I'm gonna be honest, the front facing fiend submissions were like in general kind of like hard to fit in or like hard to pick for me. Um, and so I was like, okay, I guess we can go with this one, right? This one seemed like one that we can work into making a meta that would be relatively balanced, viable, give us plenty of options to use, right? And then I was also like, maybe we can retain the original spirit of it, and by that I mean like what I thought Castle was trying to do. In that I thought this change, even in its current form, would actually make Rebecca and Will like quite good at combat, right? And so at some point we'll kind of discuss this in the future, but I actually tested this like pretty extensively to make sure that my impressions made sense. But I actually disagree with Raisins and Native's cool. I think Rebecca is like crazy good.
yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there.
Like yeah, like I routed a Rebecca early game, and I'm gonna tell you guys, I beat all of your times, like consistently, through chapter 17.
Yeah.
So, this is I'm gonna say a straight up skill issue. Sorry, right?
Okay. Well, we'll get there. We'll get to the big reveal. Well, you already revealed it, but it's fine. We'll get to the big explanation later.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically, like, you can just do this with bow units, and, like, this makes bow units just in general, like, all the more better. So, like, you can
Yeah.
just
So that
1-2
was
range.
so the crossing the river was a separate change
Yeah,
that I
we'll
put in
talk about that. We'll talk
afterwards.
about that when we get there. We'll get there
Yeah.
eventually. But I just wanted to show the enemy phasing. Yeah. Okay, so basically, yeah, like 1-2 range now improves combat. So, what does that do for the people that actually? So I guess So I think we would have put Rebecca and Will into like strong combat type, and then also Wrath elevates from secondary to carry now, right?
Yes, although with the caveat that like Wrath in its vanilla form, right?
Yeah.
He
Okay.
joins pretty
So
late.
yeah.
Like he
Okay.
joins at the same time as Heath,
Yeah.
right?
So we'll put him in strong
So
combat for now.
yeah, so we're in the situation right now where like everyone's kind of mid,
Yes.
right? Or like the ceiling for how good units are has definitely come down by a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like you either um you basically right now don't have great options for Crazed Beast. Like you have to rely on utility flyers for Crazed Beast, fine,
Yeah.
right? And then for Victory or Death, you don't really have like great options to just shortcut it. You kind of have to like do the Paladin routes or the overland routes no matter what.
Yeah.
Unless you find a way to cheese it with like a flyer drop and then somehow Fa ends up like not getting pinned by the snipers that she doesn't counter and might not have enough stone uses to fight anyway, and she doesn't double in Stella. So I didn't. On his face, I did not think that that was like a way to cheese it. So it was like, all right, um, the major the major slogs that were a limiting factor or defining factor in vanilla FE7, you don't really have great options for them, right?
Right.
So then, like, that kind of leads into some of the subsequent changes that we made, which were, not foundational, right?
Or I have one more
But I think,
foundational one actually, and we'll loop
yeah.
back. We'll loop back to what
So
you're talking about here. Actually, let me try
yeah. So
something.
before you talk about that, real quick,
Yeah.
like where
Happened.
our thought process is right now is like, okay, we need to create the meta now, right? Like we've knocked down the people from their throne. We still have outstanding sloggy maps that are problematic. So let's see what we can do to like create the meta, or what changes can we sort of like gather around to create our meta.
Yes. So the thing that defines one of the main things that define the meta is actually the ending. Like what is all what is all this leading to? What actually defines a carry? What do you need at the end of the game to actually win? And so I put up. We did redesign the finale, which I did talk about as one of the foundational changes on the stream. But I think actually what's more important to talk about, what led to this in the first place, was actually this other change, which was the FE6 guide and weapons change. So like this was an idea that I had of like trying to create interesting trade-offs of like collecting basically the infinity stones, except you can like decide which infinity stones that you do or do not want to use based on your team construct, which I thought was really interesting decision making. And so but the weapons themselves, collecting them would be useless if you didn't have a payoff for collecting them in the first place. So that's why I also did the final redesign change to give the payoff for the trade-off collection of all the infinity stones that your team determined. So, and that was really in part 2 of the finale. So both parts are route. I'll just talk about it as a whole. So, let me just actually go there in the game. Also, I do
Yeah.
want to clarify an earlier thing about that you said about the front-facing fiends changes. Like, I think the thing that made it difficult in the beginning about their changes that they submitted was because they tried to like create their own meta by themselves, just with their changes, and not allowing like they overwrote design space like that other changes like needed to fit in with. And so that's why their changes needed like a lot of massaging down to simpler forms so that they could play well with the other changes the other team submitted. So I think yes, that's a better way to say it, I think. Let me get to finale. 30.
Lists in vanilla FE7. I think those that trifecta of edits, right, work together for the one purpose. Because each thing in and of itself would probably only be would only partially the trifecta of Justin's edits to the final chapter, Justin adding the FE6 guidance weapons as collectibles, and then he had a change which you haven't shown on screen yet that involved shuffling around the recruitment conditions and availabilities of a lot of basically the pre-promoted units, right?
Yeah.
Some of the other units too, like Wrath, was part of that change, but like Carla being moved to Chapter 20. I guess Geitz being recruited actually is someone else's change, but we knew that people were going to get Geitz as a result of that.
Yeah.
And then Hawkeye being moved, Fiora being moved. What else?
Yeah, I'll get to that in a minute. I'm trying to
Yeah.
find the
Wallace
cheat
being moved,
weapon. Hellfire's
right?
Truth, baby. All right, I have my cheat weapon now. Hellfire's Truth. This is my cheat weapon. I made this weapon as like a playtesting thing. Okay, so yeah, so basically the finale is like people are in different rooms, they open up differently. I'm not gonna play the whole thing. You can see for yourself. Like they all move differently. I wanted to in finale 1. This actually there was some of this was inspired by a change that was submitted by Raising Cane's, where they actually had they said, hey, all 6 of these doors open at the same time on turn 1. And I was like, holy shit. And I was like, the basis of the reason I wanted to edit the finale also was, I do like the vanilla FE7 part 1 finale, this part, because like people can like end up resetting because it's difficult and you need to be on top of your action economy and your benchmarks. But then part 2 with just the Fire Dragon is just like a total snooze fest. And I was like, I never liked that was like the finale. Like I like a big like, climax at the end, a big showcase basically of your skill. And so like because I knew that I was going to do the FE6 Gaiden weapons into like the dragon thing in part 2, which I'll show off in a second, I couldn't make part 1 super difficult, like opening up all the rooms at the same time. But like opening up 2 to start off with and increasing the pace that you had to deal with this relative to vanilla was in part inspired by Raising Cane's. So
yeah,
Nate, it's not an RNG fest, bro. It's literally not an RNG fest.
I think I had mentioned for your well, you can't. Well, you could do it, but you probably shouldn't do something about the enemies all having 0 luck, because that really does like make crits have a lot of impact on it. But like that's just FE7.
Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah.
What are you gonna do about that? Not sure. Do we submit another edit just for that? I mean, at some point you guys are gonna be like, dang it, Dondon, Justin, like you guys are just making your own game now, not really taking our edits into consideration. So
yeah.
For part 2, right? I remember mentioning to you that like actually the map reminds me of FE12's final chapter with Medius, right? That big long staircase.
Yeah.
To like where Medius is. And I was like, yeah, so you can kind of maybe recreate some of that vibe, and then change the objective slightly. And so I don't know how much of it was directly inspired by that, but I distinctly remember mentioning that was a thing.
It did inspire me, I think, to move the guys down and have like more space to travel. And like then I was like, okay, well, what else can we fill the space with? And so the FE8 Draco zombies and the FE6 Manicheats were kind of interesting to me. For like, you could make the FE6 weapons like effective against them, and then I like the divergence of like this is physical damage, and then this is piercing damage, and so there's a dichotomy of like, well, you can enemy phase some guys and not other guys, and I did a lot of benchmarking here in terms of figuring out their stats and their bonuses. Well, their bonuses I kept intact, but their base stats to like inform how much damage they did. And so the line of demarcation I came up with was essentially like Isadora. And so Isadora at base can't really kill anything on this map with Durandal, which is like her Gaiden weapon. By the way, I don't think I mentioned this on stream yet, but like the Gaiden weapons are A rank, and they're so like all the pre-promotes basically could use them almost at base if they didn't already have A rank. So yeah, so the line of demarcation I came up with was like Isadora with a Durandal, which she could use the Durandal at base, could not kill this guy, could not kill like a fire dragon. She would be actually one short, so you would like need to gain +1 strength on her from base. But that +1 strength like allowed like Carla, who was like the next weakest of the pre-promotes, to one-shot these guys. And like their speed also was like factored into like attack speed and stuff. And then I wanted to have a dichotomy between like maybe speedy Durandal users could like double the Draco zombies with like Durandal, but like the Armads users would like need a lot more speed to be able to double these guys. But Armads users would be more likely to be able to like tank like multiple of the fire dragons on enemy phase. And so these were all like thresholded off of like Hawkeye, like I said, Isadora, Carla, and so Isadora was the line of demarcation because she can do so many other utility things throughout the game just by having 8 move, rescue, Kanto, etc. That like I figured that she would provide value there, and then like if you trained her enough, maybe she would have the stats to like still throw hands on this map. And I actually benchmarked the attack stats of these dragons to kill or like leave Isadora on 1 HP from her base stats. So you like
Yeah, he has 27 attack. So
yeah, and this guy has 35 attack and she has 36 physical 1 hit bulk. So yeah, so I like, and Isadora was like the frailest pre-promote that exists. So like she just became this line of like everything that's like Isadora and bulkier can survive at least 1 hit. Isadora needs a little bit of growth to kill everything, and then everybody else can basically kill everything at base. Or like kill at least 1 type of enemy on this map at base with a relic. And so yeah, there end up being like a lot of interesting benchmarks that people found beyond that. Like Athos being able to one-shot these fire dragons with the bolting, which is a good strat. And yeah.
Yeah, so there are there's still a few more changes related to like the final chapter actually. Like you know, you really cooked with these like fine-tuning changes to like create this experience, which is partially why like Raisins, the quantity of changes from us ended up inflating a lot because of like the changes related to like this domain of things, right?
Yeah.
Like I would say that in terms of the other like systemic changes in quantity, they were substantially less. But in terms of the things that I guess in a way like really put Justin's signature on this part of the chaos mode hack, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like yeah, there were a lot of edits that had to sort of be like I don't know, like legally placed or rationalized that way. A couple other like final chapter pertinent changes that were made. I think we nerfed Athos's base HP so that you couldn't just like YOLO him to the dragon.
Yeah, this one's a little inflated
had,
right now, but
yeah. And then we also nerfed Luna by making it not usable by Athos.
Yeah. Well, and that was the thing, Raisins, is that so we lowered Athos's HP to 37, and his con I lowered his con to 4. So 37 was that, so he gets at base gets one shot by the fire dragon, which still has 37 piercing attack. The con by to 4 was because all the FE6 relics that were tomes were 5 less weight than their FE7 versions, and so I was like, okay, well, I still want him to have like the weight trade-off of like, if you use the body ring, you can still like then I think end up like gaining more speed when you're using Areola and like, you know, Apocalypse and stuff like that. But he can still like, you know, have his base AS with 4 Blaze if 4 Blaze has 4 con now or 4 weight or whatever. I think yeah, and they robed Athos anyways is like that's the thing, is that I wasn't trying to prevent Athos from becoming a person you could use against the Fire Dragon and survive. It was changing him to a decision-making point of there's a trade-off. If I want to robe Athos, I can't robe my carry, and considering the trade-offs of that was part of the puzzle, was creating this trade-off type of experience for players where there were so many options and trying to figure out which ones were good and having legitimate drawbacks to choices that you make, and if you're willing to accept those or work those into your strategy. That was part of the gameplay experience that was intended.
So now that we can take into account like this suite of changes, right? We can probably make some adjustments on your like FE7 roll list a little bit.
Yes.
Because one of the like I guess signatures or hallmarks of FE7 draft racing in Manila is your final chapter. Sort of no matter who was your top carry, one of the flyers or berserkers, your final chapter strategy still revolved around just pivoting Athos to a lot of places because Athos had consistent base stats, right? You didn't run the risk of like having any sort of like stat screwage on your carry to throw a wrench in the strategy. And also, like, it almost didn't really even matter which carry you had because you could have sort of like a lower stat carry at level 20 like Hawkeye versus a higher stat one like Heath or Dart. And if Athos is doing all the work, then it doesn't really matter whether, you know, your carry stats ended up being like a little subpar.
Yeah.
And not only that, but the meta around killing the Fire Dragon, because Fire Dragon forces animations, is if you get a lucky crit on him, then you end up saving like a whole minute pretty much, right? Because you prevent the animations, and that's always a little bit lame too.
Yeah.
So we wanted to take a little bit of emphasis away from Athos, make you use other units, make you have to route in other units, and if you synergize the FE6 Regalia introduction, plus a lot of the changes that made like your mid-game pre-promotes more accessible and therefore usable, then you have a whole number of units that become like that take up places in the drafting order, and they adopt the role of basically like utility combat, right? Or endgame combat, or however you want to describe it, like kind of just fulfilling that role. One thing that we wanted to make sure, or that Justin wanted to make sure, again, I didn't like want to put in too much time to play test this, right? But one thing I remember talking to you about was that, like, is it possible for someone with really good planning to still sort of like cheese the endgame chapter with just carry plus Athos, right? Like, is that still a thing that someone can do? And based on what I saw from the races themselves, like, no one tried to do that, right? Is it still possible with like really fine-tuned planning? I'm not sure. I'm a little skeptical about it. Like, it's probably just safer to not try to cheese it that way.
You said endgame 1 or endgame 2?
Both of them, right?
Yeah. Well, I actually did endgame 2. I did it with carry plus Athos plus like essentially base secondary and like a staffer. And I did like have like a base Dorcas and like, you know, one other rescue dropper to like move people around, but like I based that was my team. Like, I only had the 3 combat units, so like the secondary, the carry, and then just Athos.
Yeah, I'm saying that, can you do it without the secondary, with just carry and Athos? And
I think you can, but I think it's longer than using his secondary.
Right.
Yeah.
And also cheese endgame 1 that way too, right? Like, you're right, it's not cheesing, but basically sort of like playing it a little bit not as intended. Because the intention was to try to make all these pre-promote picks have some value, right? And maybe there is some end meta that this converges to, where we're able to sort of like take these pieces out in the end. But at least for the purpose of this chaos race with this degree of planning, it seemed to have been, you know, effective, and that was the general feedback from a lot of players, in my opinion.
Yeah.
From what I've seen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not universally acclaimed, but you know.
Yeah.
I heard mostly good things about it. So.
Yeah, I mean it had hands. Like it gave a really good puzzle to solve. Like everybody concluded that the FE6 guiding weapons like were definitely worth it, which was the whole point. So yeah, so like it's I guess to cap that off, you know, just uh, the fire dragon got +2 speed, -5 move, so it does move. There is double move AI on these 5 dragons up here. And basically the +2 speed was like so like Athos couldn't double it even if he got the body ring. Um, and the double move AI was like this kind of just interesting thing where you could play it safe if you wanted to. The player could choose the scalable difficulty. You can bait these guys have overlapping double move AI range, and so do these guys. And so you could like bait these two, wait for them to come down, play it safe, take them down. Bait these two, play it safe, take them down, and then you could bait the fire dragon last and then take him down like with all your units. And so like that was part of the scalable difficulty of the finale. So I didn't just throw something at people that they're like, "Oh my god, this is too difficult." It's like I gave again a trade-off of you can spend more time to lower the difficulty for yourself in terms of finishing the map. That was the trade-off. So again, I just making more interesting decisions or giving those to the player. Yeah.
Yeah. Justin, do you want to share like the full doc that had all the changes, or
I'll share it
it's up to
after.
you.
I'll share it after the stream's
Raises
over.
Raises was asking for it. I'm
Yeah,
just
I'll share it after the
bringing to your
stream's
attention.
over. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And just really quickly, like to close the loop on this, like the low, I guess the more streamlined way to like get at the fire dragon, because he does move, and so like if you get in his range, you attack him, and then he'll move to 3 range because he's got 1-3 range, and then he'll like attack you and stuff, and like I like the intended quote unquote. And when I say intended, what I really mean is like I had to make sure that this was doable. Like I make no mistake, I have made sure that every single race is doable. Okay? So I had to make sure this was doable on myself. And the way that I came up with for myself to deal with this was to Phila's Might, the carry, which would be doing around, like, would be doing 20 plus damage times 2 to the dragon, and then they get 37 HP knocked off. You rescue them out of there, usually via rescue staff, or if you have some kind of rescue drop chain, and then you heal them up. Then the dragon doesn't attack anybody on enemy phase, so there's no animation there. The rescue animation plus you need to heal them anyways, but the rescue animation is faster than watching a round of combat on enemy phase with the dragon with no counter. And then you Philosmite them again and send them in there again, and then like they will probably knock them in range where like Athos or someone else can finish off, and you essentially 3-round KO the dragon. That is the quote unquote design strategy. So, which I did see pieces of that strategy in different teams. So now I'm not saying that's the best strategy, but I do think it's the fastest fire dragon strategy that I can think of. 3 rounds of combat. So anyways, so we can move on from this change. So we can start going through the other changes kind of in order, and then that'll start shifting the carries here. So all right, so let me get my gameplay here. Okay, let me do this, and then I'll jump to, I will, all right, so I think it's 12, right? Birds of a feather. All right. All right, so the next change you can see on the screen here is green horse. All right, so why don't you explain this change, Dondon?
Well, this was a modified change from something that
Front-facing
front-facing
fiends.
fiends suggested.
Yeah.
Yeah, we took half of what they suggested. They suggested something else too that we decided that it maybe would not have that much of an impact.
Yeah.
But they wanted, I think originally they wanted a green horse on every map.
Yes. Yeah, it
Right? Yeah.
was... Okay, so it was... Oh my god. Okay, here it is.
Or something like that, right?
Yeah, it
And
was like on every map, all chapters. They wanted a green
yes,
horse, and then there was like other restrictions of like on turn 1, this many tiles away, named war
yes,
horse, item vulnerary, and they gave it like just different stats that were like 30 HP, 10, 10, 10, 10.
yes. So I saw the vision with that one, right? I was like, okay, this is a thing that you just have to prevent from running around. But
Yeah.
I thought that having a review map was just a little gratuitous, like kind of annoying to a certain point. But having it on like a certain number of maps is definitely funny, right?
Yeah.
So what's like the balance between gratuitous and funny? We decided that all route maps was probably a good medium.
Right.
Kind of makes like a route map slightly more chaotic by having to have someone corral the green horse. And then the stats were a little bit adjusted to be like if you leave it alone, it maximizes annoyance, right? Like enough speed that hardly anything any enemy in the game will double it. Enough luck that hardly anything will crit it. Obviously, no defense and a fuck ton of HP, so that it easily goes into healing AI and just runs around and gives you a bad time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like, I mean, I think that was the team's vision. And if it's not, the way I interpreted it was that way. But I really appreciated this change from front-facing fiends because it like gave the party like a flunky something to do, a flunky that wasn't a combat unit something to do, and so you would like need to draft and field an additional unit just to like be on Ford duty, which we ended up naming him Ford. It was like the team did not submit that name. The name was like they put question mark Warhorse like that. And so I was like, no, like the name is so obvious. It's like the lowest hanging fruit of all time. The team with Mecha on it, their green horse has to be named Ford. so so I made the decision to name it Ford. But yeah, but they did have the green horse, and the goal with placing Ford was so that he would always get attacked when he appeared, but then would not die and then get knocked into healing AI. And so Dondon suggested we put the healing AI threshold for him to the highest setting, which is 80%. And the placement of him, I did have a little fun with this, cooking this, but it was like he slowly increases the requirements and complexity of where you rescue him. So like in chapter 12 right here, this position is easy. It's within reach of many units, and you can use the free units and the force deployed undrafteds to rescue him. The next instance, which I will jump to quickly. The next route map is chapter 14 here. So he's right here. So now he again starts in range of an enemy, so he will immediately run into healing AI. And the goal here is that you like can't just block the enemy. Like you need to actually field maybe someone else to do it. That would be more optimal than the person who's gonna fight the enemies that are aggro. And you need to deploy a drafted unit now to rescue him. So we haven't really moved him from like range of the party starting position, but we've tweaked the circumstances now to you can use an undrafted or free unit to now you need to use a drafted unit. You found some places where it was more optimal to not rescue. That makes sense. What is Bada's next. Living Legend. At some point the character, yeah, and that was part of it, was like, it doesn't really matter if like you found a way to like, oh, I didn't need another unit to do this at some point, I could just have my carry pick it up and have the stats. The point was that I gave you a puzzle and you had an evaluation period by which you arrived at a result because you saw a situation that had trade-offs and you determined an answer by examining the trade-offs instead of having an immediately obvious solution to the problem. That was part of the experience in all of these designs, implementations actually. This one, for example, he's still in range, but then now you're like taking more combat. And this placement was, I originally started thinking about here or here, but in my testing it was like he just got hit by one too many enemies if I didn't place him like here. I also didn't want to place him super far away where you couldn't prevent more than one turn of him running away and healing, because I thought that would be like just really annoying to like, oh my god, like, I hate practicing this hack because Forge is running everywhere and just like, oh my god, this is the worst hack of all time. Like, I did not want that to be the gameplay experience. So, while I'm finishing up these placements, Dondon, do you have any other comments about this?
No. I mean, I personally felt overall that it was kind of like a low impact change. But I felt like it balanced a little bit of giving some role, getting to a unit that like might otherwise not do anything.
Yes.
At least forcing the player to think a little bit compared to just turning off the brain.
Yes.
And then it was also just funny, right?
Yeah. Also, every placement I've said before this chapter is like, it actually disrupts the vanilla strategy of that chapter in some way, where you have to add at least one extra step and then resume the vanilla strategy. Like, you can't just do the bare bones vanilla strategy, which I mentioned at the beginning was one of the overarching goals of the design, was to disrupt, at least by a little bit, every single chapter's vanilla strategy. So
yeah. I'm sure that if we wanted to be more cruel, or if we wanted to, make you guys really be annoyed and cook, right? Like, I could have sat down and placed the horse in ways where there was like specific ways to get it that you had to be like reading my mind to do it.
Yeah.
But that just seemed to be pretty unfair, right? So in the end, it was just kind of like, okay, I'll just let Justin sort of like decide where to place it. He seems to be a good judge of that. But like, I will say that if you really wanted, or if you really were upset that the horse was not inconvenient enough, right, or impactful enough, I mean, there's definitely a lot more space that could be explored with that I didn't want to hazard, right? Like, there's definitely late game horse placements where it's like, oh, you have to do a specific chain of rescuing using stabs, and then you have to anticipate their AI like to move this way to be able to pick up the horse on like turn 3, right? Like, I could have just done that, but
yeah,
because I mean, let's be honest, you've seen my FE10 like, LTCs, right? I know how to predict NPCs and how to like route around that now. Like, that the horse is child's play in relation to that.
Yeah. Right. So okay. So the forward placement was here in this room behind the sniper. I'm not going to open the door, but yeah, you had like open the door, fight the sniper, and get the horse. So that required more units here than just opening the door. And then the last ones were, Kaga Destiny. That one was really difficult. Is he just... Okay, he's just on here. Okay, yeah, so Kaga Destiny, this one was outside of this reinforcement zone. And then it was like you had to like go around him, or you could use the rescue staff. I thought about like trying to put him here to like draw the warrior and like disrupt the flow of the map. Also, yeah, having him here disrupts the normal flow of the map from the vanilla strategy where you go up and then you come back and then you go left. So you had to like immediately do something about the horse that was to the left here. But yeah, if I put him like over here and stuff like that, it was like he just kind of like died. You could just like leave him alone and he would just die on his own. It'd be like, oh, okay, really impactful change. So it was actually kind of difficult for me to find that balance of like he's not that difficult, but he's like further away than your like normal starting spot, and you have to like do something with dealing like the reinforcement zone. And then final, I just like threw him in the middle because at that point, like he actually was 2E, I think. For final, it was like he's gone from like a nuisance that you have to rescue to now it's like you could actually use him as a sacrificial pawn or like, you know, in that way. And so he's like flipped from like an inconvenience to like now actually he's a tool. He's a tool that you can use. So like that kind of journey from like escalating like slightly the level of complexity of the situation of rescuing him and allocating a role to him for someone to do something, like in my opinion is like good game design textbook. And then like the conversion of that into like, oh wait, now I can use him as a tool. That's good. So okay, I have to scroll back in chat since I missed a bunch. I think you've answered a lot though. Nate, I agree. I wanted more stress in my life. This wasn't stressful enough. Yeah, probably gonna keep this as
those
is.
questions about what other changes, if any. Anyway, let's move on. What's next?
Okay, so the next change, where's my cursor here? Okay, so this let me expand this a little bit. Oops, that's not what I want to do. I want to actually just move this up. The same team staff effects. So again, this one I told on stream already. This was actually a change from me that was actually inspired by Raising Cane's change of. I mean, I think their change was like every staff gives 100 XP, and like I think their goal was actually to like enable more like magic carries or like more staff usage. We already talked about this at the end of the stream on Saturday, where it was like powering up the magic units so like they could, you know, just staff boost their way to like 2020 in like chapter 17 or like 18 or 19 or whatever would be, you know, they'd be like clear in a way, like very centralizing. They have staff utility, they have, you know, magic combat running through the game. So it was a change that like I was interested in making staff and magic units better, but just not to that degree. And so like this honestly was like a child of your guys' change, and then I actually had to rope in a few more things into it while like trying to like still go for the type of premise that you guys were going for, that I thought you guys were going for. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm also going to jump in and say that I bore a lot of responsibility for making this change too, right? Because we talked about this quite a lot about how to adapt what your team's suggestion was.
Yeah.
To make it like not as broken, but also more impactful. Because you know, one of the issues with FE7 drafting vanilla meta is that staffs barely do anything anymore. You have very limited availability of warp and rescue, very few uses, obviously. You only have like one warper in Pent, which made it very hard to make a route around the use of warp and make it save time. And so, like, I think your original change was that you wanted to make warp and rescue come a little bit earlier or something like that too, right? In addition to making all staffs give 100 XP. And
no,
so
it was just XP and Wexp, so that like you could like get to warp and rescue easier for anybody, basically.
Because I was like, okay, if I'm reading the change correctly, you want to make staff users more viable, but you didn't change the availability of the staffs at all that were impactful. So why not change that too, right? And so that was kind of like the main focus now, which I felt that it would be more impactful if you um, made if you basically did to like rescue what FE12 does to it, right? Um, and then also like uh, looking at the FE12 meta, especially the vanilla meta, right? How it goes is you have one round of carry picks and one round of staff user picks, because that's how impactful it is to have an E rank rescue, C rank warp, and infinite ranges on both. Um, but of course, in FE7, you don't have infinite ranges on both. You would need to, you know, make some sort of patch to enable that. It would probably be too broken, given that you don't have equal availability of staff users.
Mhm.
Um, so the middle of that was just to, implement the changes but keep the staff range restrictions in place, and then you really have to figure out like where are you going to make the staffs more available.
Yeah.
And because you have E rank rescue in vanilla gives 40 experience and 7 Wexp, so it partially achieves the change of um, like the experience, but it's not game breaking because 40 is 40% of 100.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's not like the amount of time that you would need to spend grinding is multiplied by 2.5, which makes it less profitable. One other problem too was just that like we actually couldn't figure out how to decouple the cost of staffs from experience gain.
Yes.
Like the only resource we found was part of like an ASM hacking tutorial and didn't come with a patch, so we actually could not figure that out.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why it wasn't implemented.
Yeah. Yeah, and like to kind of emphasize this and hammer it home is like even though this was technically by the rules of the challenge our change, we were really trying to bring the essence of your suggestion to life in a way that wasn't broken. Like that was the genesis of the some of these changes actually that were quote unquote our changes. So,
Yeah.
um
And to clarify, right, like, you know, the the original change of making stabs 100 experience, like, you can argue whether or not it's like broken, but I also felt that if it wasn't broken, it was a little bit centralizing. Um, because then, like, you would have one staff user who gets free level ups, um, irrespective of like what other, uh, you know, what combat availability there is, right? And then that staff user gets 1/2 range that hits magic, which is not good against bosses, but good against everyone else, and they're mounted with 8 movement. And they will at some point end up having like uh, Priscilla at max level has like what 10 staff range, right? She caps at around like what 20 plus magic.
yeah.
Off the top of my head. Like her magic stat is not like terribly low. It's not
Yeah.
like Clarine in FE6. Uh, so it was like, okay, Priscilla's going to be OP if you do that, right? Like, if someone can solve the problem of um, how you defeat bosses with her, then like you would have a clear first pick, and that's not something that I wanted. So,
Yeah.
like, how do you change the units such that actually separate thing. I was even concerned that the way the change was implemented could have been potentially broken if someone really found a way to route in a lot of stab uses and exploit it, right?
Yeah.
Because like I didn't want to end up underestimating how impactful it was to basically have someone who could do like 5 range rescues all the time. Because
Yeah.
the way that I think about it is that a 5 range rescue is like having a dancer, because that's effectively what a dancer ends up doing a lot of the time in like a speedrun setting, right? You do a dance in turn 1, and it's no longer profitable to like rescue drop and have that dancer do dances in subsequent turns.
Yeah.
So they're really just like a 5-tile boost to movement on turn 1, plus an extra action, right? A 5 range rescue does the same thing. So, like, what if you had a dancer in the form of Sarah starting in chapter 12, right? Is that broken actually? I don't know, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to like do a lot of testing to test that out. So I was afraid that if we made them even stronger than they currently are, then it would be a little bit too centralizing for someone who's clever enough to figure it out.
Yeah, because our time for testing was limited and mostly like just me, because we did this like I did this like in a week. So I was like, yeah, I I was agreeing with Donna's attitude of just we need to be really, really careful about letting something that's really we think is really strong come in here and then all of a sudden exploit the whole meta and just blow up our tier list. Um, and like, so we were very cautious in terms of what level of power we perceived and thought should be appropriate to let into the game and not be overly centralizing. Um,
Mm.
so I will say, shit, what was I gonna say? Lost it. Okay, anyways, like the Priscilla thing and the thing with like Sarah, like, oh yeah, okay. So the thing is that overall, I think the teams as the strats progressed, like did find like I think more traditional spots where you would be like, oh, okay, like by um you know, Dragon's Gate, the choke point, like the hallway with Cameron, like a few teams are like, oh yeah, like we should rescue someone up and like move through here, and we can like save two or like 2 turns basically. So there was like a lot of traditional ways used like that. I think Raising Canes, your team also came up with rescue staff for Oleg map. I think that was your team, or maybe it was front facing fiends, but like to get Oleg combat on you on like turn 1 enemy phase and finish him off turn 2 player phase. Like because you can combine rescue with the dancer that you now have. Um, rescue Oleg, yeah. So like you didn't end up using okay, because like the thing though is like it's very obvious that like okay, well Pent can warp over a long distance that you can't really assume anybody else will have. So like it's really easy to think like oh Pent will save a bunch of time later with a warp that no one else can do. Like in the map like the Berserker for example, the poison tunnels. But the thing that the early staffers have is like you can if on mostly Seas maps and kill boss maps, if you save 1 or 2 turns because you get a good rescue play in there, you start stacking up time saves of like a minute to 2 minutes. And like all of a sudden, if you have like 5 of those, you've saved like 5 to 10 minutes. And like it just, you don't really perceive it because each individual chapter is like this tiny thing, but it keeps like exponentially growing. And so I think like their availability is like actually I perceive it to be at least equal, if not stronger than Pence, because they could stack up all those small time saves that were hard to like understand that they were stacking them up. Um,
Yeah. I definitely envisioned a possibility where some team could be like, oh, we're gonna route in and rescue use literally every single map because like this rescue use here can save 10 seconds. Another one here will save 30 seconds, right?
yes,
This other one here, even though it like it's pirate ship, right? It's like whatever, but you get to Zoldan 1 turn faster. You have one less animation. You just have to like route out turn by turn, so you're not losing some of that time by actually going through the menus to deploy your staffer and then like inventory managing and that sort of stuff, right? Like, and it ends up cutting into the time save slightly. But even if you just manage to figure out like 20 seconds here, 30 seconds here, right? It really adds up. And that's why I was afraid that this change was actually going to be broken. And I guess maybe I overestimated like how much people were going to end up employing it to the point where it could save that much. I didn't see that much of the VOD, but my impression definitely wasn't that people were using rescue every single map for like nickel and diming time saves, right? But I could
they
definitely
weren't.
envision
They
some
weren't.
sort of like end meta if this draft race meta were to progress,
Yes,
where like there is an advantage to be taken from routing in a rescue use like almost every map
yes, yeah, and
and
like
treating it like an early dancer.
yeah, and that's like kind of some of the depth that Raising Canes, like when I was on your team call, that like I kind of alluded to was like it's that type of thing because teams, I guess this is free advice for everybody. Teams tend to like look at like their sections or like characters in terms of how much like they could save time in like one chapter in like isolation. And so if you're like, oh well, in chapter 14, if I use Priscilla to like rescue Fa and like we clear before the rain comes, like I mean, like, it kind of seems like it might be even. Maybe you save like 20 seconds, but like, it's not a big deal. Like, don't work it in. Like, I'll just like, kill the pirate. I'll walk file down there. It'll be one extra turn. It's like not worth adding that rescue and like having a whole nother plan for like, the Sarah team specifically or whatever. Like, that makes total sense. But like the rescue, like we're saying, is this like accumulation type of time save that you can do, where actually if you decide to do all the 20-second time saves, but some of them are not 20 seconds, some of them are very obviously more than 20 seconds, it is like a bunch of time.
Yeah, Nate, there is kind of a hard cap. It's 2 early staffers and then plus Canas. Um, and then we actually had debated quite a lot, Justin and me. I'm not sure we ended up being on the same page about that, but we were like, does Urk count? Right? Like, because he starts level 1 and you have to like train him a lot, and it's kind of a hard ask. And like, does Lucius count? Because we didn't do anything to improve his recruitment and availability at
Yeah,
all.
yeah,
Without like, we could have submitted a separate change for that just to make sure that people got a fair 4 staffers, right? We could have changed Lucius so that you got him for free at level 5, right? So that he was basically like Canas starting at a lower level, similar availability, but didn't have to go to Garden Chapter to get.
yeah,
So it was like we could have made that change, right? But I personally did not want to just like continue making a ton of changes that
yeah,
were a little bit like cute.
yes, yeah,
Because I also was just not certain whether or not people were going to end up really trying to squeeze every second out of a rescue
yeah,
user, or if it was going to be more of a nothing burger and we were being too careful, right? Like, consider that, the end game of the FE7 vanilla meta, when we were trying to get PBs on all of our like carry routes, we were doing like 20-second optimizations of how do you fight fewer enemies in Unfulfilled Heart, right?
yeah,
Like that sort of stuff.
yeah.
So, I didn't know if people were going to progress towards that nexus quickly, or if it was going to be sort of like, let's just do comfortable strategies and not get too fancy about it.
Right. Yeah, and that's like we couldn't know that. So like kind of trying to ride the line in terms of having something that was interesting if people wanted to stick more towards vanilla strategies, and something that was also interesting if they really really tried to push the boundaries and breaking away from those strats. Like that was the canvas we were trying to provide everyone to paint on. And it was really hard, and like not all the decisions ended up working out the way we thought, but I think we were like way close to like what actually ended up happening, which was the whole point. I think we nailed it.
Yeah. One more thing I was going to say in response to Nathan's Cool's comment about like, what happens if you don't draft one. So the fact that you have 4 teams sort of like making a new meta, and then or like dealing with a new meta with different approaches, right, different mindsets, and an auction draft format, meant that there was definitely the potential of one team being like, okay, we're going to go all in on investigating rescue strats because we don't think any other teams are going to be good enough or creative enough to be able to leverage them,
Yeah.
right? So like, to me that would have been fine, right? Like, I would have totally, I'd love to see that if that ended up actually being a positive thing. Of course, I'm also open to the possibility that I'm just way too theoretical here, and that maybe the rescue changes were not impactful enough. But I would also say that this kind of change has the potential to like be a very fine line between nothing and broken.
Yeah.
So that's why this this kind of like philosophical change with the staff utility was a little bit hard to balance without a lot of play testing.
Yeah.
And then one of the changes that I ended up doing, right, where I nerfed Priscilla, tied into this, right? I felt that if we are making stabs way more available, and Priscilla was already strictly better than Sarah because of being mounted and having a little bit higher stats at base, then I'm going to give Priscilla a nerf so that they're more balanced and make it so that she cannot attack when she's promoted. Maybe there is still some like approach to like a seize or a kill boss chapter where you can charge Priscilla ahead and just like rescue past enemies with her not fighting, so that you actually waste fewer seconds. You can actually waste less time on combats. That was like one possibility that I envisioned, which might have been enabled by like the early rescue availability, leveling up, gaining some stats to be able to survive that sort of thing, or just like at some point a sacrifice thing where she just runs real far ahead, does a big rescue, and then dies when you don't need her anymore for the rest of the game. That kind of thing, right? Like that was still on the table. Um, but I guess I can't be too disappointed that most people saw that were just like confused or mad.
Yeah, the reactions. I mean, yeah, it like it makes sense when you don't have the context of the big picture. Um, yeah. So I think it was fun. I would have been interested in um like magic carries as well, but since it was kind of like you either need to buff the staff utility or they need to be like only combat units, and it's like this game, unlike other games, doesn't have a lot of utility that's not stabs or movement. Um, and so like they kind of just had to be utility if we wanted like another unique role for like them to fill. So it was like there was a few suggestions. I think one of them was by Mecha's team to like make all the magic carries like really good. Um, broken actually.
Oh yeah, that was crazy. That was like +5 to all stats, including defense, and I was like, no. Um,
Yeah, it was so the target that they chose was the Kenneth Route XP contributors. The stats were +5 base HP, +3 magic, +5 base speed, +5 defense, +6 base con, +20% defense growth, +20% HP growth, D rank of dark magic starting at base, and 1 copy of Flux in each of their inventories.
yeah, that made staff users like offensive magic users at base, right? So I mean, so OP, like incredibly broken.
Yeah, yeah. So again, it was like
I got
another.
I gotta take a bathroom break real
Sure.
quick. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just
So it was another version of like their changes were intended to like create their own meta by themselves. Um, and again, like it's those stats were like kind of insane for like carry. So it was intended to like compete with flyers basically. They were still like, well, we made bows dangerous with like the 1-2 range and like all the buffs that like bow units get. But like to compete with that level of carry, we need the grounded magic units to have all these like stats and stuff. Which makes sense. Just didn't want that level of power, like that centralizing power level as the top of the tier list board in this meta. Raisin, some of your questions. You were okay, so you were interested in Sarah 14. Nice. Okay, but yeah, too late. Yep. Yeah, maybe next time. Future format going to remain auction or traditional draft. I just, that's up to the racers. I'm not gonna. They can decide if they want to do auction or traditional draft. Dondon said he was like, oh well, if one team finds it, like I was like, no, actually, I'm trying to have like 4 units of each role, or like I could kind of do 4. I could see 4 teams that could be picked in a snake draft, guide my principles of like how roles were divided. And so like yeah. I mean, but you could do auction and just end up like outbidding someone and just sometimes giving yourself a huge time advantage, like literally at the draft. So engage stuff, too many warps and rescues. Yes. Okay, give me 1 second. Okay. Yeah, I got a shit done that differently. All right, what else did you guys say? Doing arena stuff only to remember she couldn't use Luna. Yeah. Yep. Oh, trying to grind arena rank. Yeah. So like, see if it would give her a dark tome. Yep. Yeah, the Luna change, which we can go over briefly, was just Shaman, Druid Lock, remove crit. That was for like more consistency against Zoldom, but also just to like, again, we explained in the finale, we just didn't want Athos running around with it, basically. And just like shitter critting stuff, and let that be Kanas's thing. Let Kanas have unique value by himself. So liked auction line. I did too. It was really fun. Okay, to finish up on the staff part, so like along with trying to honor what you guys did or what you guys were doing, like obviously there's more stuff in here, and I was like, how much circle closing can I pack into this change while also trying to like honor the original vision that Raising Cane's had? And so like Donan said, like getting the staves earlier, that became a thing. So then I like truthfully, like I actually didn't really have to follow the rules that everybody else had for the changes, but like I still tried to within, again, the very, very flexible boundaries I set for everybody. So I tried to still play within those. So the rescue, like that's available like candy. It was at first this was rescue and warp. Yeah, it's very flexible. Get rid of those quotes. It is. The physic was like, okay, I can rope this into Lucius so that like maybe someone will want to recruit Lucius just to get the physics staff. And then because like I'd narrowed down the target. I was like, I can't, if I'm following the rules everybody else says, like the way that I would enforce this on someone else is that like I can't just do warp and rescue. I have to have like a category of thing. So I was like, okay, the category is stabs with range, same team effects. So then I was like, well, I have to do something with, if I'm changing location of warp and rescue, I actually have to also change the location of physic and fortify. If I'm changing the uses on warp and rescue, I have to also change the uses on physic and fortify. If I change the rank for rescue and warp, I have to also change the rank for physic and fortify. So like, that's how I like, quote unquote, governed myself. And that's why there was so many staves would drop uniquely in 28 or 29. That would have been great. However, here's why I chose to include Physic and Fortify in this and do the same range team effects. Is because so again, I mentioned the Lucius thing. I was like, well, maybe if he comes with the Physic, like someone will want to go and recruit Lucius or draft Lucius or something, and Lucius can be part of this staff utility party that's forming here. Maybe I will be able to increase Lucius's value somewhat. And number 2 was because I couldn't get the Saint staff in the game, and I wanted, because I thought that people might skip the Renault part of victory or death, so I wanted Fortify to be like obviously in the player's path. Like you almost could not miss it. You would have to choose to not get it, so that they could have Fortify as a failsafe in the finale on Athos. I was like, I gotta give a safety net for the player like that. And I chose to differentiate it to like Panted Athos, or if you trained up one of your earlier staffers to actually have B rank as a point of differentiation in the staff utility category. So that was to finish that. Again, it was to help the player, to help the player experience. Okay. All right, I think Donna's still not back yet. But I will go on to...
Oh, I'm back. I'm just
okay.
listening.
Did you hear that part then?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this change, RD Fiona. The story of this came from, what does the Goddess Staff do? You're the Saint Staff? It heals everyone regardless of where they're like it's infinite range, and it heals you to full and cures all status. I tried to implement in the game, it just didn't work. I couldn't figure it out. So I was like, okay, well I'll give him a Fortify instead, because that basically does the same thing that they would want to do. Okay, so RD Fiona. This change came from the Fleam team. It was pretty similar to their base submission, but like essentially the one difference was the chapter, and we mentioned this on stream, where they submitted like Fiona joins actually literally in the chapter that's on screen right now. They wanted her to like, I think, replace this mercenary. I think. Let me just look it up. or no, it's just inserted into chapter 14 as a recruitable enemy. So she would just literally be here and have the same stats and growths. And so I was like, well, we both were like, that's way too good. Because she was promoting into Silver Knight, and I love the fact that this team change, the Fleam team change, was going to interact with the front-facing Fiend's change of the bow range to, like, actually make Fiona really fucking good. And so I was like, okay, like, we just need to move her back, because, like, I can't have her joining in front of the other Christmas, not the other Christmas calves, the Christmas calves, who are, like, carry options. They join 2 chapters later and are, like, 4 or 5 levels lower than her. I just can't have that. I like, that's too centralizing. And again, the reason that they submitted it was like, well, she's a grounded unit. No, their goal wasn't better utility paladin. Their goal was like, she comes and is so good so early that she can compete with the vanilla meta Flyers and Berserker carries. So it was like, that was similar to your guys' submission to buff paladins, which was like, give them +2 in all their promo stats, or their promotion gains were +4 in every stat, while the con remains the same. And so it was like, you guys also were like, let's try and make more carry options to compete with Flyers, in case, or at least compete with the Berserkers. Con -1, sorry. To compete with the Berserkers, who in your guys' version of submitting, be like, you had nerfed the Flyers pretty well. I think you mostly understood that, but you still remain open to the possibility that maybe they could carry. But like, you guys didn't touch the Berserkers, and then you guys are trying to buff the Staffers too. So it was like, let's also buff the Paladins to try and make them competitive as well. And so, like, it was a similar type of thinking where they were like, we're not aware of the other changes, so we're going to submit something that, like, we're trying to change the meta in isolation, basically. So that Fiona, like, is a valuable character and she's not just the shit cav. So I understood where they were coming from, and I was like, guys, like, just trust me, because I knew that the bow change was going to be approved. I was going to approve it. And so just the interaction of those two to create Fiona into this type of unit was really good. The Berserker movement change was from the Fleam team. I mentioned that earlier, but they didn't change it to its current iteration until I gave them, like, some guidance of, again, it was like, Berserkers have 2 movement, but through all tiles except they have normal movement in weather or something. And they didn't know if that was going to get accepted or not.
I'm going to quickly point out, too, that, like, even with the bow change, even if, like, Fiona was just, like, kind of lance-locked the entire game, if she joined this chapter, with the Flyers and Berserkers no longer on the throne, still OP.
Yeah. Alright, so let's grab Fiona and put her up there. The stream is, like, not going at all the way I thought it would. So we're like way off the rails, but it's fine. It'll serve the purpose of what we're trying to do. Okay, so Fiona's in the carry spot now. We've got all this staff utility and stuff like that. I'm trying to think if we missed anything else. Oh yeah, also I was like, at the time that I was starting to do this, I was like, I also don't know. I don't really know how to make a recruitable enemy, and so I was like, when Dondon suggested, hey, what if we just replaced Raven, I was like, oh my god, yes, that's the perfect solution. He already is recruitable. I don't have to figure it out. So yeah, so replacing Raven made the level curve timing better. Also, we wanted to differentiate her from the other calves in terms of, like, you got the other calves while you could, like, if you were considering Lowen, like, you could have Marcus and help train Lowen, or, like, Marcus could help train other carries. And then Fiona would be, like, you needed to solve half a map without Marcus, and, like, that would be a differentiating factor to her cost, is by putting her in 17 in the Raven place. So.
Yeah, you still need someone to fight the waves of enemies before her,
Oh, shit.
And then recruit her. So you need to have, like, a secondary for that.
I probably should have just gone to the chapter itself.
Whereas for Cavalier, if you wanted to carry with them, you would just have them like put them on a pillar in chapter 17. They probably would have gotten like a couple levels in chapter 16, and just feed everything into them because that's how you do chapter 17 anyway, right? Unless you skip it with rescue.
Yeah. Here she is.
Yeah,
Okay.
I will say that, like, in its current iteration, I agree she's probably still like the best overall combat unit. Like, if I had my druthers, I would actually probably still push her back like one chapter, ideally. But we were a little bit limited in terms of what Justin was able to do with the ROM hacking knowledge he had.
Yeah.
So 17 was kind of a compromise between that.
Beyond that, though, Fiona, yeah, like she definitely has, like, she's basically Kent with Lowen's bulk, but then also gets bows. So yeah, so she's like 3 calves in one, or she's like 2 calves in one, but also gets bows. So yeah, so her movement type is similar to the other calves. So like, if you consider them as part of the carries, which we do, as part of the carry pool, she definitely is like the best calf.
Yep. So her settling on here, right, was what motivated the Wrath change, which is part of like the green unit shuffle.
Yes. Okay, so this one was also my change that Dondon helped with the Wrath joining time thing. So at first this was just gonna be, we're just moving Wrath earlier, so because I knew that 19X was gonna be a thing, 19XX, and as part of the race day twist, and I wanted the carries that we perceived to all join before 19XX. And like 17X is like whatever. Like if you have Osborne or whoever, like you can just win that map. Like you figure it out. Like you can get to, because I knew that was going to be part of the race day twist as well. So yeah, moving Wrath to the Dread Isle was suggested by Dondon, and then I like really like dug. I really like opened it up because there was still so many worthless units, and I was like, I need to do something to pull as many of these units out of worthless as I can. So like the thing, I already had half of the puzzle, which was I had the Gaiden weapons, right? The other half of the puzzle was like making the characters easy to recruit. So I just like really pried the hole open on this one and just jammed as much stuff in there as I could to move as many people out of worthless as possible. So if I just create like a strong combat tier, so that ended up being Carla, Hawkeye's already there, and then Harkin, or not Harkin, well, Karel stayed the same, Jafar, and then Farina, right? Karel, I just moved his recruitment place, but we'll get to that in a second. So, I'll keep these guys in niche utility. It's confusing for now. Yes. Okay. So strong combat was like, so Carla was like, she was like I said before in terms of benchmarking the finale, was really similarly statted in terms of Isadora, but she was like slightly better statted, and like Carla needs +2 speed from base to double the Draco zombies with the Durandal. But I was like, if I put her early enough, like her 60% or whatever speed growth, like she'll just get it. Like it's fine, she'll get it. And like I knew the Durandal was gonna be early, like on the chapters that she like on Dragon's Gate. So I decided there to like also give like an option of like, well, maybe through the mid game you would consider Carla versus Isadora as we return to the key phrase as a trade-off consideration. One has the movement advantage, the other one has combat advantage. one of them like scales better into endgame, but has the worst movement type throughout the rest of the game. It's like an interesting trade-off between those two early Durandal users. So just having that evaluation be possible. I roped, or at first actually the change was actually we were just gonna trade Fiora for Wrath, their recruitment spots. And then I roped all the green units into it to get the strong combat, and I decided to move Fiora from the Wrath chapter, which was Euban's, to the desert because I knew from a game design perspective, the finale, the intended strategy was to get Phila's Might. So I purposefully gave an undrafted flyer on the desert so you guys could have free access to Phila's Might so you could solve the finale. I gave you that safety net on purpose. All right, and then Wallace also, because there was another change later, but roping him into this route early was like, hey, I thought that Oleg map could be done like so quick between what we already discussed on with Dancer plus Rescue Staff that like you could maybe one turn that map or like turn 2 player phase that map. And so like Wallace could actually retain his vanilla utility of you like draft him so you can deploy someone to go shopping. I mean, that's the map the Pure Waters are in. So I was like, if someone wants to just rescue skip this map, let me give them an option to deploy Florina or whoever to help them with their shopping if they or visit villages or whatever. So I wanted to make sure that like he remained, instead of like the route split being removed from the moving down to the worthless pool, remaining in like niche utility at least. Unpromoted Florian doesn't reach the vendor, no? I mean, on turn 1 or turn 2, like she's gonna get there so someone's gonna get there by turn 2. So it's more of like if you don't have like drafted units to do all the stuff. If you're moving her by herself, yeah, but like you could move her, you know, like with assistance, right? Yeah, so then it's like, are you visiting somewhere else, you know? Yes, and the free Silverlance, totally didn't think about that because I was running out of time and I didn't consider beyond that. You were asking about the restore staff in your stream raises. I'm just saying, I don't care if you were memeing. I'm gonna take it as serious because I can't tell when someone's being sarcastic. So you were asking for it on your stream in the finale. Okay. Yeah, and he also comes with an elixir too, which was part of that. So, okay, and then Farina, like, I just didn't want someone to have to pay 20,000 gold to get her because that's annoying and the conversation's super long. And it was like turn 2 was like, if you drafted her, you could still use her to like do stuff on the map, but like maybe not as fast as if you had already drafted a flyer and trained them or whatever. Even if you didn't train them. They could start doing stuff on turn 1, and she just had better stats. So it was like a trade-off scale of like the ones come earlier have more availability, but like if you want to do combat stuff, like you draft her and she's already good to go. So yeah, so like that was like, how do I, honestly, the word I was looking for was shoehorn. How do I shoehorn in as many green units as possible to drag them out of the worthless tier? All right, so the next one, we already went over these two. The Berserker one, we already went over the Luna one when you were gone, I think.
Oh, Justin, we should talk about like Wrath level, I guess, because I think people are accurately identifying Fiona is the best, right? And
okay, go ahead. Yeah.
I also personally feel right now, in the current iteration of the changes, Wrath might be slightly underpowered just because of his availability. Like, ideally, I would have loved for him to join slightly earlier. Like, if you think about it, the difference in availability between Fiona is like, she joins on the tail half of 17. Then you have 17X, you have 18, and then Wrath joins in the front half of 19. And that, like, 2 3/4 chapter difference is actually pretty impactful, especially because, like, in terms of stats, Wrath is a little better than Fiona, like strength especially, but you're right in that, like, the amount of levels that you gain in that period of time does make a pretty big difference between the two of them. That's why Fiona is better. Because, like, Wrath, you get in a map where you would love to have someone already good enough to fight Uhai, and he's not going to be good enough at base to do that super well. You know? And plus, you still need some sort of bridge to get him there, whereas Fiona needed a little bit less of a bridge. So, I remember we had, like, talked about one of the ideas was, like, what if, like, I think Wrath replaced Lucius and he joined with his Lin mode stats at level 7. Something of that variation, right? But again, I stopped pursuing that because I did not want to introduce complicated multi-step changes into the equation. But, like, maybe that would have been slightly better balance between the two of them. But then one of the problems would be that the two of them together are probably stronger at that point than the rest of the Cavaliers.
Right.
Plus or minus, not sure. But yeah, I mean, fair enough grievance if anyone is upset that Fiona is maybe significantly better than Wrath is, even though ultimately they're both pretty strong.
Oops. Okay. Yeah, so this is kind of, and I just added the Marcus to carry bridge part. Yeah, we had some restraint reasons. That's the answer. We had some restraint. The reason I picked unpromoted level 5 was because I originally was just going to say recruitable green units, but then Dondon was like, dude, like, do not touch Urk. Like, we should give him that goddess icon in chapter 14. Like, do not touch it. I was like, well, what if we just swap Urk with Lucius? Then I can just be like, it's just recruitable green units. And he's like, no. Let them have the goddess icon in chapter 14. Don't touch him. I was like, okay. So then I had to come up with a way to, like, get Urk and Lucius out of it, basically. I almost did turn 2, but then I was like, am I, like, hurting Urk's value a little bit? Like, yeah, it was, again, like, 30 hours of work, and I had to, like, make this decision, like, I had to do this all in a week that I'm working full-time, right? So, like, I don't have infinite time to just, like, think of every possible solution and implement it. And
yeah, I didn't want to inundate Justin with, like, frivolous changes. So
yes, and, like, to try and, like,
Justin was already doing enough of them himself.
Yes. to again try and, like, not do so many things where everything else was, like, I still think there's a balance between what we did originally from our own ideas and, like, versus, like, all the changes that the teams made, and then, like, again, remembering that some of the changes that we did were just, like, we roped in the concept of changes other teams wanted into, like, our changes just to make them more balanced. So okay, all right, so then the next one is Four Fang Defense route split, swapping the level requirements from Linus and Lloyd. This was from Team Drafting in the Skies. Absolutely love the change. Just definitely wanted different levels in there that were not the usual. And so just swapping them presented more stuff. It also put Geats on the board, which I loved, for strong combat. Love that. I love Geats. I obviously put him up number 1 in the draft, in the auction draft. So he is actually, like, one of my favorite characters in the game. I just never get to use him because it's usually a draft race that I'm playing. You don't go that route. So yeah, so I absolutely love that one. And that accomplished a lot of my goals. Okay, do you wanna change? You wanna talk about the sniper change?
Oh, this is the sniper terrain change, right? Okay, so if you look at the current role list, right, it's Fiona and Wrath are a touch better than the Cavaliers, but those guys, that group of five seems to be like the prime carry candidates, right? And it seems like all that we've done with the bow change is we had to do another change to make Wrath better, and then we made Fiona OP, right? So I was like, okay, we need to like sort of balance out the meta a little bit, maybe give a little bit more options to players um, to investigate. And so I went back to where my approach is like look back to what makes FE7, like what defines FE7's vanilla draft meta, right? It's Crazed Beast and Victory or Death, chapters 25 and 32, right? So, you just always have to come back to those chapters because we didn't otherwise change the other chapters. We're including some guidance, which might throw a wrench into things, and we also were forcing people to go Jeremy chapter in Pale Flower of Darkness and Linus Forefront Offense. But looking at those chapters, it doesn't seem like they made that much of a difference in terms of like affecting the meta, right? They weren't defining like Victory or Death or Crazed Beast were. And because I knew the race day twist ahead of time, in fact, we debated sort of like the severity of it a lot. I knew that Night of Farewell was going to be on the table, and that was also probably going to be a meta-defining map in terms of like if that were part of the vanilla FE7 meta, like it would further reinforce Flyer dominance and Berserker dominance. So if right now we have mounted bill user dominance, how do we compete with that, right? And so my idea was, what if we basically remade the Berserkers, but they were nerfed, right? And so we have those units. They are the archers, Rebecca and Will. Like, they are shitty to start with, right? They have okay stats when they grow, and definitely in FE7 where you vastly outstat most of the enemies. Like, they can grow to a point where they're killing everything and never dying, especially when they have 1 to 2 range weapons that are a tier better than javelins and hand axes. So to me, that line of reasoning seemed perfectly viable, and I was like, well, how do I make this change with like the least number of adjustments possible, right? So in Crazed Beast, the reason why the Berserkers are good is because you can send one over the mountains and then the lake and get the top right, while you have a secondary grab the bottom left and the Pascal for it, right? It's like a different
Wait, I'm almost there.
order of things than where Flyers do it. Because I think Flyers, they like swing by the top right and then they get Pascal and then the secondary gets the bottom left. But Berserkers can do across the mountains and then up top. So and then in Victory or Death, the requirement is actually, even though the strategy for Berserkers has them go over a peak, you do not need to cross a peak in order to get into Limstella's territory through the shortcut that they normally take. You only need to be able to cross rivers. So then my conclusion was, if we just made snipers able to traverse water tiles with 2 movement cost, then you solve both problems. They can do both things, and we basically have like slightly worse Berserkers, which seems to be appropriate given the power level of the current meta, because Flyers are not dominant, and so no matter how good like Fiona and Wrath are, they don't have like the terrain advantage of crossing lakes and crossing rivers. I guess Wrath can cross a river, and in fact, I was interested in someone who would explore that as being like kind of his edge over Fiona, but I'm not sure if anyone did. So that was my conclusion, right? I was like, if we basically just made the shitty early game snipers who now have good 1 to 2 range offense and options on 1 to 2 range offense, a Berserker replacement, then they are basically carry material, right? So with that one change, my conclusion was that the meta would be at the very top, Fiona, Wrath, Rebecca, Will. Okay, and I anticipated that people would be slow to catch on to this because these 2 archers have such reputation of sucking, and they do have a kind of like a huge hill to climb when it comes to their stats, right? But the thing about FE7, which gave me some reassurance in that regard, is that first of all, the experience curve is really lenient. If you do like your standard Hector solo of FE7 up until your carry, right? Once Marcus is banned in after chapter 16, Hector, based on like the VODs that I saw, based on my strats, he goes into chapter 17, starting at level 9. He kills everyone there because he's the only unit that you have. He's your carry, right? And he usually ends that chapter in a vanilla draft at level 16, right? Like, he gains 7 levels in chapter 17 alone. And then I was like, are there ways to cheat chapter 17? Like, with a current meta? No, right? Like, you're not going to get a Marcus version 2 in chapter 17 without like a major slowdown chapter 16 to like train one of the Christmas calves, or I guess you could like rig the hell out of Loman, which in itself would cost time. So in the end, like, you're not going to be faster than a Hector chapter 17. I didn't know about the rescue skip, but only one team can do that, and you do sacrifice still a lot in the future chapters by like not training your carry in chapter 17, because we usually take the chapter 17 training arc for granted, right? So I was like, okay, well then if Rebecca and Will can have good enough stats to if Rebecca and Will can get good enough stats to like do the Hector thing in chapter 17, even if they're like 1 minute slower, even if they're 2 minutes slower, like, you make that time up with Victory or Death, or you make that time up with Crazed Beast, right? And so like, it's actually perfectly fine for them to suck as long as they don't suck so much that they are completely unusable. And so part of what I did was I tested this with Rebecca, because Rebecca seemed better to me because you have more of an opportunity to train her.
She is.
Right?
She is.
And I did some like I did a turn by turn for Rebecca solo up to chapter 16, right? And I had her level 9 going into chapter 17, same level as Hector, much worse stats, right?
Yeah.
And then I was like, if you're gonna kill everyone anyway, you can just have her camp on one of the pillars, and that worked out really well. Like, she didn't die. I tried this with above average Rebeccas, with average Rebeccas, with like slightly below average ones, and she did have to go through like a number of vulneraries, but I think like of my, I probably did like 5 runs going here. I think there was only one time that she actually died when she was on the pillar, right? And I was like, that seemed fine. She ends this chapter at level 16, level 17, right? She's good enough stats at that point to like hold her own against the enemies, and sporadically use a vulnerary but kill things. You get an Orion's Bolt after you kill Uhai, and then once you promote her, she just destroys everything, right? I did a run where there was one run where I continued up to Dragon's Gate, and I literally just like move forward and turn, and she would kill everything. And she ended Dragon's Gate at like sniper level 6. She was like 26 at that point, and her stats are crazy. Like, 26 Rebecca for chapter 21 is way better than Hector at level 20.
Yeah.
In chapter 21.
Yeah.
So that reassured me that like the Rebecca path was viable, and that I felt vindicated that she would fulfill the future role, because like the hardest part of the archer carry is the early game, and then once you have the stats going, I mean, maybe at some point very late in the game, they won't have like as high stats, but like, maybe the Victory or Death route was a little optimistic, although my rationalization was, part of the reason why Berserkers wanted to go through the peaks on Victory or Death, and then Justin, I don't know if you want to bring that up or not.
Yeah, I can do that.
So that we can show them, right? It's actually for the defensive bonuses, because the Berserkers are going to be carrying Hector. But because we no longer are obligated to carry the Lord with our carry unit, then you can actually just have a flyer carrying Fa trailing behind, and like even do a death suicide drop, and so they would be unburdened going through the river pathway and not have to use the mountain, the peak, for the terrain advantage. So Justin, go to the top right corner real quick.
I'm gonna warp her up there.
Oh, okay. Because I just wanted to show where exactly the terrain in question I was, right?
So you have the. Wait, where's the? Give me 1 second. I'll find that. Who has it?
The warp step is on Athos.
No. It's more than the warp step. I need the. Who has
You need
it?
Hellfire?
Okay, I'll just give him a new one. The cheat item. Yeah, the Hellfire's Truth. Yeah. Okay, because that boosts warp range to like infinite.
SMH my head.
Ah! Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's good enough. You got it. And you have to keep in mind too that like usually Hawkeye carry is not that great in terms of stats. He's good in bulk, but his offensive stats can actually really suffer in a vanilla run. But yeah, you can just have Rebecca cross the river over there, right? Usually Hawkeye or Dart are on the peak tile, like 1 or 2 below where she is. I forget which one. But you are not obligated to cross the peak in order to get to the top right corner. You can just cross rivers, and you'd be perfectly fine. So, you know, I was hoping that someone would catch on to that, or that someone would decide to meme and just go with Rebecca carry. But I guess like people didn't pick up on this insight, or
Yeah. So let me
on Rebecca or Will.
Yeah, because I think the evaluation that teams had, and quite frankly, I had until we had a discussion about it, and you convinced me, is like, but like before we made the change, was like their stats are really bad, and like a lot of the evaluation that teams specifically had was when they were looking at this change, be like, oh man, as well Rebecca is like. They see the stats and then they just like did like kind of like base stat evaluations of them versus like other carries. And then yeah, so but why did you have that evaluation, Nate? Like Raisins, like it was because you look at their base stats compared to other characters and you're like their base stats are like way worse, right? Or like their stats at like level 10 are worse than like Saint or Kent at level 10, right?
Well, I would also say that I'm gonna guess that you guys tried using them and like
I don't think they
didn't
did.
have great experiences with them.
I don't think they did.
Well, I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt. But,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and so like, you know, I like part of the reason why, you know, that's the inertia of FE7 vanilla, right? Which is that you don't train anyone early, and then like you try to carry all the way, try to solo with your lord all the way through like the mid game. And in this current iteration, if you don't get Fiona or Wrath, right, you do have to kind of train someone early. Even if you get Wrath, you kind of have to train someone early, unless you're just gonna like Osmond solo through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I like this was partially informed by, because I have experience. I came up with a low end training arc before, like just in my like conceptual testing that I've never put on video anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, I came up with a Fiora, the Florina training arc in 16, right? So I was comfortable with knowing how to use Bird and Marcus and feeding Rebecca those early kills. And once she is level 9, like you can give her the goddess icon for a little bit extra avoid. But like if you plop her on a pillar, she can tank through enemies in chapter 17. Like, and one more thing, you know, that you guys glad that you guys brought it up, right? Because you know, the low end training, you guys incorporated like RNG manip into it, right? Like resetting for stats.
Yeah.
And I never considered that for Rebecca because, like, on principle, I always consider that to be a little bit slow. But in a imperfect like skill environment, I guess it is worth doing. And so I didn't do that with Rebecca, but you could certainly augment whatever I came up with Rebecca with 2 or 3 rigged stat level ups. And I think she's going to be cooking there, right?
Yeah.
Like I only have one screenshot of my splits, which I had once shared with Justin, and Mega pointed out that like the Rebecca in the screenshot was pretty stat blessed, but I remember in that run that the stat blessing came with her last few level ups at the end of chapter 17. When she entered chapter 17, she was like average to above average on some important stats, but not like that far above average. Uh, but like, you could have that as a given for Rebecca, and then it's off to the races, right? Will, I never like put in the extra effort to make work after
I put in
adjusted
effort with
Rebecca.
Will. So just to figure out the training arc, and it was like it was really tough, and I honestly like I'm gonna leave him up here because I'm showing like what our intended meta was, but like I I would feel a little bit dubious about Will after trying to route him myself. Um, like it is a long investment cost. So like in the Lin map, let me just go there actually. What is that? 13.
16.
Or
One
I'm
mitigating
going
factor for Will.
on the outside, the training arc thing.
Yeah, 16.
Yeah, so I'm going there now.
One mitigating factor for Will compared to Rebecca is that Rebecca does cause a minor slowdown early because of the Burden Marcus. Specifically in
What the hell?
chapter 12, there's a bit of a slowdown.
Oh, what the fuck?
What happened to Will?
Well, I already have Sane and Kent, I guess, so I don't know, maybe he died. Okay, anyways. Okay,
what was I saying? So Rebecca does have a minor slowdown in chapters 12, and also her slowdown in 16 is a little bit worse than Will's because of Marcus taking a detour. So you can afford to go a little bit slower on chapter 16 to try to invest a bit more experience into him.
Well, let me tell you what my plan was.
This is one of those.
So
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, when I investigated it, I was like, how do I get Marcus down here and like setting up kills? And then it was like, I couldn't, like, because he starts so far away that I was like, I couldn't really get there and then like also get the C's before like these reinforcements started coming. And I was like, I can't do this. I can't just have these reinforcements coming over here and not have, like, I was like, okay, basically, I feel like Marcus had to go for the C's. So then what I came up with was all these kill setups between like Kent and Sane, like setting up like all these enemies over here to like they were the quote unquote burden Marcus, where they wouldn't double, and then the enemy would peel off of them and like suicide onto Will. And so it would, and like I use them for like rescue dropping him to change positionings and stuff like that too. So but yeah, it was a little dubious, I will say. It was a little dubious. But it's fortunate that you have free units here to like train him where he starts at least. So but yeah, I was just like, okay, Marcus goes seizes with Fa, and then like I picked up like 2.7 levels here, like kind of on schedule with Marcus seizing, maybe slowing down a little bit. But then the next map, I was like, with drafted units, I was like, I felt like he kind of needed, like a rescue Canto or a rescue Staffer to like reposition him after he attacked, in terms of what I was trying to come up, and like beyond like, so I was doing like Will and Sarah, and then I was like, well, let me just have like the worst flunky of all time and see how bad this is. So just had like Bartray. So like it was like he could do a little, like Bartray could do like a little bit of like set up on like a armor knight or something, but like he really couldn't do anything else, other than like drop Will or something like that, or like block tiles. And it was like and I was trying like to not deploy other units to, like block the nomads on the left and stuff, and so basically it was I kind of got stalled out like near the starting area, and like I kind of was like, well, maybe I should just wait out the nomads and kill them all, which he did. But then I was like, okay, this is kind of slow, like I can't really progress. He's not strong enough to progress to the map, like, and like avoid the nomads and stuff. So that's the chapter where you incur like a lot of time cost with Will.
Some of my Rebecca testing had her just kill all the nomads too, right?
Yeah.
Like those guys are actually a pain in the ass now because they have the 1-2 range.
Yeah.
And in the end, you still end up like leaving the map like in the low 30s in terms of your minute count if you were fast before that. Like the amount of slowdown compared to Hector solo, right? It's there, but it is not as much as you'd think. And in the end, you come out with a level 16, level 17 archer with strong 1 to 2 range options, and at that point they'll have enough bulk for that part of the game to like solo through it.
Mhm.
You basically have a mini Hector, right? And then they exceed their caps once they get their Orion's Bolt, and they're better than Hector. And so it was like, I mean, I think it would be a little bit too conceited for me to say that it was obvious, right? To me, that they were pretty OP with this current setup. But I thought that based on my like rationalizing about what saves time and what doesn't save time in vanilla FE7 and what has or hasn't changed, that they were still quite good. For Will, right? You said you got him 2.7 levels in chapter 16. Like that's really solid for the amount of time that you spent there.
Yeah.
You can set it up so that you massage his first level up, make sure he gets like 7 speed at least.
Yeah, it was
right?
against this guy right here. Like I would rig the level
Yeah.
against this guy right here. So
Yeah, you could do that, right? That probably actually makes a pretty big difference.
Yeah.
If you do that, because early stats snowball into later stats, or
Yeah.
early stats snowball into kills, which snowballs into later stats. And Will's base stats in a vacuum are like compare them to like Kent, for example, right? Like he is minus 2 HP, minus 1 defense, right? It's a significant difference, but it is not one that is super insurmountable to the point where it makes him unviable.
Yeah.
And I also felt that the fact that Gina's team committed to training Urk in this chapter with their team's like approach to the race. Urk is even frailer than Will or Rebecca. So like I felt the concept of training Urk or Will or Rebecca in this chapter is definitely like viable based on their performance alone.
Yeah. So I have two branches off that. One, to give them partial credit on the sniper thing, is that their backup, if they were denied Urk in the early game, was actually Rebecca. Now, that wasn't because they thought she was actually good. That was because Cyndaquil had like done a whole game run with Rebecca because he likes Rebecca, and it was something that they had prepared, and it was like, well, we know we can do this other thing, and people on our team like know how to use it, and it's like they determined that she wasn't that bad, rather than strictly good. So, but yeah, it's like they have better survivability than Urk, which is true. And like, I mean, to compare Rebecca to one of the vanilla carries, Florina, like Rebecca and Florina have similar bulk, at least physically speaking, which most of the enemies that you fight are physical enemies. And like, no one complains, or like people kind of complain about Florina, but like they have determined that Florina has quote unquote enough bulk to be a carry. So like a judgment on Rebecca, who can also benefit from terrain where Florina cannot for defensive bonuses, both like hard stats and soft stats. Like the stat profile is there of a carry who, and Rebecca has better offenses because she has better weapons and better 1-2 range than Florina. And now has like the second, like of a unique movement type, like has one of the best movement types in the game when promoted.
Yeah, and she has a level lead in stat lead too by the time that they both exist.
Yeah, and
like I remember Florina, I got to level 6 in my routing for chapter 17. Rebecca is at level 9.
Yeah.
Which more than erases Florina's like very, very trivial bulk lead at their base stats.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm pretty sure if you leveled up Rebecca twice, she nearly ties Florina in bulk anyway. So a 3-level lead is not insignificant in terms of like HP defense. But one more thing too is that Rebecca is better at dodging things because she's not weighed down by her weapon.
Yeah.
Or you can choose not to be weighed down by her weapon.
Yeah.
You can also choose to weigh yourself down and not dodge as much.
Yeah.
Or more power.
So like it's a very non-obvious thing, and the thing that we've been kind of dancing around is, but we've been kind of saying it, but to hammer it home, like the level curve, like Rebecca is coming out of this map at like you said, like level 16 or 17. She's entering this map at like level 9, which, you know, so basically what you're really comparing is like going into this map, level 9 Rebecca versus like maybe level 6.7, maybe level 7 Kent, maybe, right? And then she has better combat from 1-2 range than he does. Like, or like at least the bow might can like help her achieve similar stats, but then she's like really fast, so she can double with the iron bow, and then like once she builds up enough speed, she can start doubling the enemies on this map with steel bow. So she's got like a 9 might weapon by the end of this map she's doubling stuff with. That's 1-2 range. And Kent is like using javelins.
Yeah, I again, I didn't see the VODs for what people's Christmas Cab training arcs were in this chapter. But like my Rebecca training arc was I put her on a pillar and I put Fa kind of like far away so that she doesn't distract any of the nomads. And just hit end turn, vulnerary, everything dies. Eventually.
Yeah.
And it gets easier and easier because she gets level ups.
Yes. And then once she's at level 16 or 17 leaving this map, and like you level cap her, like her avoid, which is the cornerstone of her bulk, which is similar to Florina, is quite high relative to the enemy hit rates, right?
Yeah, I mean it's more than good enough. You know, her level 20 average is 17.4 speed, 13.5 luck. Give her a goddess icon, so it's 15.5, right? So that's what 17, 34.8 plus 15.5, 39, almost 50 avoid roughly, and then plus like tactician bonus if you give her fire affinity. Right.
Let me go to pirate ship.
You know, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah,
she'll be fine.
Well then, like okay, maybe I should have gone to Uhay map where you're like. Let me just go to Uhay map.
Yeah, it's a couple points. It still moves the needle. When you know you're facing hit rates that from the enemies are going to be like low 30s or sub 30, right? Like every little bit will still help. I think USS Gordon Captain's favorite way to explain it is that he says it's hyperbolic or whatever. I don't know if I believe that, but I remember this map being like just kind of a pain in the ass because Rebecca moves pretty slowly through the map.
Yeah.
But like, is it slower than Hector? Right? Like we dealt with Hector moving slow as fuck through the forest. You know. I do think maybe a faster way, if you actually route it out, is to have her cut down the 2 snags, or if you have someone take down the 2 snags for her on her way there.
Yeah.
I didn't assume that I have anyone else to do that, but I think if you routed that in, it's probably faster for her to go that way.
Yeah. What was her combat like on Uhay?
It was fine. I mean, Uhay has a short bow, so you just attack from range, and he doesn't do that much damage with it.
Like, what's your hit
rate?
Rate?
You'll survive a hit pretty easily. Oh, your hit rate on him, right? So if I remember correctly, what's Hector's hit rate on Uhay usually? It's like 50 usually with a hand axe, right?
No, it may be 50, yeah, like if we're being charitable. 50 with a hand axe, and then like maybe 60, low 60s for Wolfbeal.
Okay. So Iron Bow is 85. Hand axe is 60, right? So Rebecca is plus 25 on that. So that's already like 75. That's pretty good. And then if you account for the luck and skill differential, which I forgot how much skill she has. Hector has like 12.5 skill, 8.7 luck at level 20. Rebecca has 14.5 skill, plus 6 luck, plus 2 skill. That's plus 10 hit from that, right? So Rebecca has plus 35 hit on Hector with a hand axe.
So Rebecca's
Using an
pulling like
iron bow.
85 hit rate on Uhai.
Yeah, and I did finish off Uhai with Fa. It was like, you know, I do a chip, I do some skirmishing,
Yeah.
on him with Rebecca, and then I get the kill with Fa for a big hit to end it quickly, because at that point Rebecca's level capped, and so Fa would benefit from the XP anyway.
Yeah. And then you're off to the races. Then she, on the Dragon's Gate, she just walks forward.
Right. Easy. Like,
Yeah.
so brain dead.
Yeah.
You can get the Brave Bow, get a silver bow from the sniper for like more lols, right? You have a Brave Bow in that chest, right? Like,
She just walks, no terrain. She just
draft
walks
a flunky to, you know, kill like the stragglers. You can rescue, and then she's like, you know, up in Cameron's face in turn 1.
Yeah.
I don't think she'll win on Cameron without like the silver bow or a brave bow, but like, you know, it's a very advantageous fight for her anyway.
Yeah.
And then, you know, she busts her her level cap so she can gain even more speed and more luck.
Yeah.
You know, what's her stats at like 23, 24? 22 is 19 speed with the goddess icon, 16 luck. 19, 38, 44, 54 plus tactician bonus. Her bulk is like pretty good too. She gains like 4 HP, 2 defense on promotion. That's perfectly adequate for the enemy level at that point in the game. It's similar to Florina's promotion bulk.
Okay, here
Right?
I'm
And
gonna
Florina,
draw a
like,
curve here
does just
of
fine.
Rebecca versus the enemy, the enemy the enemy curve. Okay, so this is the enemy curve right here. My cursor is Rebecca. This wall is the enemy curve. So at some point Rebecca meets it, and then she exceeds it, and she's kind of close. And then she promotes, and then she's like way above it, and then it starts coming back towards her as the game kind of finishes. But like just getting that early lead where she breaks through the difficulty curve, and then it's like the difference between her and it is like just this chasm because she's so over leveled with the best weapon type and doubling stats. And actually I like hacked in a Rebecca with like relatively realistic, like, you know, like cap like 2020 stats, and like she was the person I used to test the final 2 actually was Rebecca. 25 times 2 against the fire dragon, just saying. Or maybe it was 23 times 2, but still, you get the point.
Yeah. Will, I believe in him, right? I still think like he's usable maybe a little bit more. Well, they're challenging in different ways. Because Will is like, you have a very short period of time where it's like really dicey. Whereas Rebecca, you do need to do the early game training arc in addition to that chapter 17 training arc correctly. But my point is that like I was trying to make sure that we didn't have units that were way too broken, right? And that was one of the reasons why I vetoed the change to the bows that like boosted their stats, because if you had that, then actually Rebecca and Will would just be like crazy good, like blow everything out of the water, and it would be like at that point, would I do the berserker change, the water walking change for the snipers? I mean, the problem at that point is that like they're crazy good stat wise, but they have no other advantages, and so there's no other like reason to use them aside from them just kind of like rolling over enemies. And I felt like a bigger buff to them was actually giving them the water walking and enabling the time saves and crazy beast and victory or death, as opposed to like the statistical changes. Because if you buff the bows, what you really do is you make Fiona and Wrath even more OP. you would separate them even more from the Christmas caps,
Yeah.
right?
What I will say is though, like I have some because I think just to play some devil's advocate here, I think there is some like uh versions that you can play this map with like a flyer taking the right here that are like I mean it is actually faster than the bow unit, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think Glukes and like the Glukes and Genna, their team, the Drafting in the Skies, they showed off they trained Heath to level 10, promoted him, but then they showed off a turn 3 clear of this map, featuring
Mm-hmm.
Heath going this way. They had Urk rescue Geets to take this, and then they like dance boosted Carla to take this one. So like the the advantage in this map is like, okay, well, training the flyer maybe because they advanced the bottom unit. You had the same strat as them. Yeah, you got to time it up, man. You got to time. No, it was good for you to find that too, like for the most part. Um, so like now I think you can do. I know they also came up with a 4-turn that had a completely like untrained flyer drop Fa like over here, and then like Fa like kills the bishop and then the flyer seizes. So like there's like a 4-turn with an untrained flyer too, so like it's the time save relative to how many units you can use now to build a team. Like I think the advantage in this construct is that Rebecca and Will would have like a roll compression advantage if you're trying to build a team, because like they could do this chapter with less units. But if you are using the flyer to take the right, that does actually lower their relative ceiling. The snipers.
Yeah, I mean, there is like the possibility that whatever other changes were made to the game uh, affect the impact of those Berserker specific or like water walking specific
Right.
time saves that existed in vanilla, right?
Yeah.
Like that certainly could have some interactions. I will say that Night of Farewells is probably an equalizing force more in the other direction.
Yes.
Or unequalizing force more in the other direction, where they can just water walk from left to right and just finish it, right?
Yeah.
But of course, it's unfair to expect people to assume that Night of Farewells was on the
Yes.
table to begin with.
Yes. Yeah.
It was more of just like if you plan for a sniper carry for this run, then it was just a very nice side benefit.
Yeah. I do think you can do like this map could essentially be the in FE8 like the Tyzel, like chapter 12 Ephraim, where like if you pick up Fa with your sniper, like only the snipers are moving towards you, and like these guys aren't moving. You know, the reinforcements are gonna get blocked because these two can't see you and they don't like, you know, and so yeah, there's like a bunch of enemies that just aren't gonna ever move because you're doing like a quote unquote flyer skip, but a water walking sniper skip here. So yeah, so yeah, this is the I guess counterbalance to some of those other flyer clears. Now, could you have a flyer do something? Yeah, but like your flyer's not your carry, so like you need to get your carry over here. So like your carry's gonna be like walking and fighting a bunch of people and stuff. So yeah, you can
The flyer, if you deploy them in a tile that's adjacent to water, they can fly over the water.
Yes.
Right, like if you deployed Heath in Luis's spot, then he can actually go onto the water.
Yep. Like these guys technically can.
Yeah, if you're like walking back and forth, right, then it does take extra time still. I mean, it just reminds me of the like the flyer strat for Chapter 20 Ilia, where you have to like go back and forth one time to get both Fa and Roy, and it's still like decently fast, but you can feel the amount of time that
Yeah.
it is
Honestly,
sapping from you.
like they can be actually additive, where you like have a fire pick up Fa, like you were saying for Victor or Death, and then there's just a sniper just
Oh
water
yeah,
walks and just snipes everything. That would
yeah,
be so fast, honestly.
yeah.
That would be so fast.
So anyway, I think we said enough about
Yeah, we
snipers.
spent like an
Like
hour on the fucking snipers. Oh god. Okay,
but
anyways,
like
moving on.
I don't know, come up with a route yourselves, test it out, or maybe at some point I'll either share
Feel
or
obligated to prove
play my route.
if
I still
people
have it
still
written
doubt.
down in my notepad document.
I mean, this is exactly how Florina carry happened, how FE6 like as a meta got developed is because you were like, yeah, I believe in this idea, and everybody else is like, nah, I don't think so, bro. And you're like, all right, fine, hold my beer, and then you come out with it basically. So, but yeah, so I'll leave him up there for now because this was the intended meta, and yeah, I'll move Luis actually to there, all because of this map, but. Okay, and then so the next change was Kenneth Jeremy. Let me just go there. I could not resist putting these two changes through. I told everybody that. I absolutely, once I saw that one person was like permanent snow and Kenneth, no snow and Jeremy, and the other person was like Jeremy routes Forest, I was like, I have to do that. I could not live with myself if I avoided this amazing meme. Is this the right one? Yeah. Yeah, so this one was, the two teams that submitted these were, Drafting in the Skies did Jeremy No Snow, Kenneth Snow, and then, yeah, Raising Canes, you guys did, Jeremy Chapter Forest. Another, again, the Fleam team, one of their original submissions was you actually just play both versions of this map back to back. And so it was like, oh, like let's put the Hero Crest users in like the draftables or like combat pool, and then also like, yeah, that's everybody's trying to do some version of that. Some people want to play Jeremy because they feel like it's more interesting. I think that was Raising Canes' idea. They thought it'd be similar to like Revelation Chapter 14, which like you want to clear before reinforcements show up, by using multiple units to route. And then I dropped some stuff in here like the Armads and stuff and the Warp Staff, to like give more objectives basically. Anything else to say about this one?
No, Droomi's nice. The placement of the horse in this map was designed to be, if you didn't know, a bit of a troll at first, because you could open one door and be like, oh, it's the other side.
Yeah. It ended up not being like Rev 14. Yeah, no, I agree. It's like get to Jeremy as fast as possible to kill him so that the reinforcements stop showing up, and then just have a million player phases as you methodically walk one unit around. So, yeah. Unfortunate it didn't quite work out, but at least Jeremy No Snow is a thing. At least the No Snow thing, I was so happy someone submitted that. Because like I wanted to try and remove barriers like that, like playing chapters like that to the game that people generally think are just annoying things rather than like interesting. So I was really happy to implement that change. All right, and then the next one on the list was the Battle Before Dawn redesign. This one I really liked from team Front Facing Fiends. It was very tricky actually to figure out how to do it. All right, you're a little boy. Give me that warp staff. I'll show you how a man does this. Okay. Yeah, so just making this double kill boss, which I think is really cool, and then because I knew that we were going to have all the movement stabs available before this chapter, it like really played with the way that you could interact with it, because there's like all these walls and stuff, and so it's like, you know, shortest direct path. Wait, shortest path between 2 points is direct fly. What the fuck? How did I fuck that up 4 times? Okay, and then it would be like interesting. Like they wanted Jafar blue and they wanted Nino blue. But yeah, I like this one a lot. That they enabled a lot of creativity. Then stacking with all the other changes with the warp staff and stuff like that, and all the available units you had. And then let me just can I use this? Oh, fucking hell. Well, whatever. I was the Apocalypse guy's over here. He originally had Seek Zephiel AI, and I was like, it seems kind of lame. So maybe if someone goes over here to fight Maxime, like they can just fight the mage to get the Apocalypse. So that was fun. Yeah. Some of the strats I like from the race was like my favorite one was team drafting in the skies, just move Nino straight down so that Ursula kills her on turn 1 and she doesn't like waste combat animations after that. So I thought that was pretty funny.
That's funny.
Yeah. Also,
I like the changing of this to double kill boss.
Yeah.
I mean, because normal Battle for Dawn is already kill boss first, then route, then end turn, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't. It makes it less lame.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't.
We definitely
waste less of your time. Basically.
We definitely had like a lot of discussion about what to do regarding Jafar and Nino after they were made blue, because on the one hand there was like make them free, but I thought that you can just end up having Jafar kill Maxime in that case, right? And it seemed pretty lame. Or just like, if you didn't draft him, at least try to have him kill Maxine.
Yeah.
If he failed, then well, someone else can finish off Maxime. And then the other thing was that, like, you know, there are enemies that have AI to go towards Zephiel, but you always just have the option to move Jafar to bait them over and put this killing edge, right? Like that solution.
I really love the I think I said it earlier, the drafting the sky strategy here with Urk and the 7-range warping into this room to kill Maxime, which I actually showcased the flyer thing. Like they actually sometimes they would have their Heath do that actually. So which was funny. Raisins, once we got here, are playing it seemed like a very obvious warp skip.
Yeah, seems like it.
Yeah, no, I think everybody used warp, but everybody used warp differently. It was warp, but it was like, how do you warp? Like, how much time can you save by warping? And where are you using it, you know? Yeah, I think, I don't know if anybody else besides the Drafting in the Skies team actually rescued Zephiel out. But what was interesting, actually, was that Drafting in the Skies, I was just rewatching, or I was just watching their VOD earlier, where it was like, they actually messed up the strat because they had extra rescue range in Urk, they decided to rescue Staff Zephiel out 1 turn earlier, and that, I think, fucked up enemy movements and totally screwed up their approach on Ursula. It was like, oh, we could just do this now, and I was like, no, don't do that now, you don't know what's gonna happen. But, I mean, sometimes it's when you have more stats, it's like, you don't really have more stats if you don't know what to do with them, basically. So, but they had a really good strat, though. I really love their strat on this map. Let me do the Demon King one first. I'll just load that save state, even though, or let me. Nice. Okay, here he is. Okay, so this change, as I explained earlier, was by the Flame team. It was to change Nurgle into the Demon King, which I absolutely loved. It also worked really well in the redesign. And uh they're like, well, we'll just leave it to you to like figure out the weapons thing. I was like, okay, because I already had an idea that like the FE6 weapons were going to be effective against Nurgle, and it was just like being able to put in the Demon King was cool to like give another target that the weapons had a payoff for that was like better than Nurgle. And I decided to make him stationary because I knew that like part 2 was gonna come, and like I didn't want people to be like, oh my god, the Demon King moves, and oh my god, all these dragons, and the Fire Dragon moves, and like I felt like that would be a little bit too much. Yeah, just he's really strong, so he actually kind of locks out like a lot of the secondaries actually from contributing, because he can just like one-shot them with Ravager, or you have to like be careful around his ranges. He's also pretty fast, so like it's kind of cool. Um, Again, another like kind of speed locking out of like some people from doubling and stuff like that. So yeah, I thought he was like just good for being there, wasting time, or not wasting time, but like taking time. Like you can optimize killing him in fewer combats. Um, but yeah, I really love this change as soon as I saw it by the Flame team. Again, it was like part of round 2 of their suggestions, but I was absolutely in love with this change. So good job by them. Yeah, and then so that leads us to the race day twist, which as like I will go there. Pirate ship. Okay. I was like, if it's Genesis, I'm Omega. It wasn't put on. You weren't put on final because you don't think you could have won. What do you mean you don't think you could have won? The race? If you have the legendary weapons and some elixirs, it's doable. Yeah, and that's the that's the thing, is like just having more payoffs for those like the slightly out of the way things to get. So like that could not have worked out better in terms of just like a MacGuffin hunt, collecting the Infinity Stones. So basically, the race day twist was going to be like, okay, so let me actually back up a bit. So I actually came up with the idea for this race all the way back on September 12th, 2025. Originally, this was going to be essentially a PME, which is kind of what the cast part was, and then that's literally what it was, except I curated the PMEs. But the base game was actually going to be randomized to start off with. And then I was like, and the changes were going to be like less, like there were going to be less changes, because the randomization was going to be oh, like everything's different now. And then I was like, but like randomization actually is hard to balance around, and like selecting changes would be hard if I don't understand the randomization meta. So I scrapped the randomization idea, and then surprise race day changes was like part of it from the very beginning. I was like, yeah, I'll give a hint. So okay, so the original idea, because I didn't I was going to have less edits, and then it was going to be more on the race day twist. And the original race day twist was to add 4 guidance. It was always going to be the guidance, but originally I didn't have 17x included. It was going to be 19XX, 28x, so those 2 lasted. And then the other two chapters were going to be 23X Genesis was part of that, and 32X. And so, also, I had this idea to like help increase like the amount of roles on a drafted team, to have this rule that I called the Slayer rule, which was whoever got like killed the boss on these chapters, or like got the last kill on like Genesis, was the Slayer on your team, and you couldn't deploy them in the next map. So fast forward to we get all the changes and we approve them and I create the game. I was like, wow, there's actually like a ton of depth here, like without like the additional chapters. What if it was FAE? It was not allowed to be FAE. If you did it with your Lord, that you had to reset the chapter. So the thing with 19XX, 23X, 28X, and 32X is that the chapters that come immediately after them are... So 19XX goes into Dragon's Gate. So, like, I mean, you could kill the boss of 19XX with your carry, but, like, okay, then what are you going to do on Dragon's Gate? You could kill the last enemy on Genesis with your carry, but, like, what are you going to do for Four Fang defense? You could kill the boss Sonya in 28X with your carry, but what are you going to do on Cog of Destiny? You could kill Kashuna with your carry, but what are you going to do on Final? So like it was like that kind of like, holy shit, like these are actually like high leverage points that the rule would impact. So but again, like my conclusion was, because there was so much more viable units in the changes, and there was like a much richer meta depth, I was then like, well, and Dondon was against the Slayer rule from the beginning. Like he was like, don't do that. That's like so backwards. That's a horrible idea. Like I'm actually not exaggerating. That's kind of what he said. But I was still interested in it. I wanted to see how the meta shaked out. And then, so then I was like, okay, well, I think like adding more chapters, they like might be really upset by that. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna make it scalable in terms of like, I will remove stuff for like, okay, if the hardest version, okay. Also, I added we decided to add 17X for sure, like as a lock, to like get Canas, like, into and I feel like this is a lot. Like I don't think we need the Slayer anymore. I'm actually hesitant to add like Genesis and the Value of Life, quite frankly. And the Genesis is obvious for like magic stuff and like all the weird status shit that's in there, and then the Value of Life was like, for me, was kind of unattractive because it was like so asymmetrically favoring Pent. Cause like I think he has the base warp range to like warp into the room from like the starting area. And I was like, that I just really don't want to have like this asymmetric Pent time save. So I decided to be like, okay, well, the hard version will be, so the easy version will be 17X, 19XX, and 28X. The medium version, I'm just gonna add the Value of Life, but I'm not gonna add the Value of Life at a point where you have the Warp Staff. Actually, I was gonna add it before you get the Warp Staff, and then scale the enemies more appropriately for that point in the game. And And then I was also going to consider shifting 19XX to be a little bit later, so that like Wrath could have like more ramp up time. And then the hard change was going to be we add in Genesis, and we have a modified version of the Slayer rule where it was like 17X, 19XX, and Genesis get the Slayer rule, but not the Valley of Life and not Night of Farewells.
So, by the way, Justin, I was gonna say, when we talked about this briefly, I had actually advised, like, I was not opposed to adding Genesis. Like, I think I remember actually encouraging it because I didn't have the time to check at that point. But on Hector normal mode, there are no status stabs in
Okay.
Genesis. Yeah, it's just there's one guy with the bolting, and that's it.
Yeah.
There's one Luna Druid. So they hit hard, but it's not bullshit. It's just Hector hard Genesis that's kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
So that's why I was like advising to put it in. But like, you know, fair enough. Maybe future consideration for posterity, like people will remember that Hector normal Genesis is not as bullshit.
Yeah, as Nate
Yeah,
reacts.
it's one guy with a bolting.
Yeah.
I opened up FE Builder and looked at the enemy loadout, and I did not see any status stabs.
Yeah.
Yeah. On Eliwood mode, it's like physical enemies.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the other thing why I like... Oh, sorry. I also considered variants where, like, maybe I would include Imprisoner of Magic, 19X, in some of these. And, like, the actual, like... The challenge design of the original challenge design that included the full Slayer rule was, like... If you just went to, like, 19X... You could, like, train up a unit to just be the Slayer, and, like, every time you went into a Gaiden, if you just pretended like your Slayer was actually your carry, like, you could just completely leave your vanilla strats uninterrupted by just having this, you're playing a second game half the time. That's, like, removed from the first game. But I don't think people would think about the challenge like that, right? Like, that's what Donna was advocating. It's like, yeah, that's like nobody's gonna. That's like such an unobvious way to go about it. So
yeah, especially since like people aren't necessarily going to be planning their routes, trying to budget for 2 carries. You know.
Yeah. But yeah, so it was like, but you could just like, or yeah, no matter what, like any iteration I did of the Slayer rule, like you could have done that, but it was like counterintuitive, honestly, for someone to think about it like that. Yeah, and then I was hesitant to also include the honestly, quite frankly, I was hesitant to include the magic seal maps because I knew that Drafting in the Skies was doing Urk early carry, and I was like, wow, I actually just I know that they're gonna do this. And so I basically would have had to shift the magic seal maps to a point where I knew that they were going to like have their first handoff to like Carla or Isadora was their other option that they were scouting for that role. So I would have had to like move the magic seal maps to a point where they already had a unit that was not Arc that was good at combat, basically.
Yeah, but then they would have had Rebecca carry.
I didn't want to like they could have, but I really didn't want to force them into their backup plan because they were like all the fuck in on Urk. Like they were like 90% prepped on Urk and like maybe like 5% on Rebecca and then 5% on just like dicking around. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, you could make some degree of like an argument with a little bit of validity that because there was a race day twist that was advertised, right?
Yeah.
That guidance could be on the table. It
Well,
seems like such a low-hanging fruit sort of thing.
so one team actually guessed that was the change.
Yeah.
The Fleam team, when they submitted their racer divisions to me, they're like, yeah, so and so is playing these, so and so is playing these, and so is playing these. Oh, but these are only if there is no guidance inserted into the game. And I was like, okay. I mean, I like. There's no way they could have prepped for them though, because I just actually completely redesigned 19XX. Well, I didn't completely redesign it, but like, why would you practice 19XX? Why would you spend time doing that? Night of Farewells, it
Right.
was more likely, but like I redesigned that pretty wholly, just because I felt
Yeah.
like it played awful without those changes.
Right. So, but there is still just kind of like at least a pathing to get experience with those chapters, right? Like,
Yeah.
ultimately your starting position and your end positions are still kind of the same. But like, you can there is some validity to the argument that there could have been some expectation that guidance would have been in play, right?
Yes.
And so like going that far in on a magic carry would have been like not anticipatory about that. Although I do see the validity in saying that like this is one twist that could really just twist the knife into someone's plans.
Yes.
So I see both sides of the argument, but it doing a guide in the race is such low hanging fruit that like
Yeah,
it's
I
sort
mean,
of like the easiest thing you could do.
yeah.
Right, as a
Well,
twist.
I think everybody's minds like were all like when they reacted, it was like I think they were expecting me to be a lot quote unquote meaner, because I think they
Mhm.
had in their heads like, okay, well this is gonna be like some chaos FE8 PME shit where it's like the menu is changed, or like, turn 10 when I said shit goes down in Night of Farewells in my intro, like I told them turn 10 is when shit goes down. They're like, oh, like a bunch of dragons are gonna show up, and I'm like, oh my god, like what the hell? Like I just wanted to like add like a slight variation to like to add more interesting gameplay and add even more trade-off decisions, like the boss with double reaver, like sus, like the paladin, it's like that, like if you're unprepared, like that actually can his like really swinging hit rates depending on the weapon type, like that's an interesting decision. And then the Sonya thing was like, if they figured out there was a 5-tile warp, but like I also defended that warp tile with like wyverns that wouldn't move unless you actually move there, and then like all the snipers, like if you just keep running away from them, they actually come and take the ballistas and like kill your dancer, which actually happened to Team Raising Canes. Or it wasn't your dancer, it was Isadora and Priscilla, your warper. Okay. So like yeah, like I actually like timed all that shit up. But it was like interesting, like like gameplay that wasn't super punishing. I did remove all the status staves from 19XX and 28X, because I felt like,
Yeah, honestly, 19XX might be more burdensome on the player than Genesis in Hector Normal.
yeah, that fucking troubadour with the sleep staff, I was like, also I removed the fog. Did you know that?
Yeah, I remember seeing that
Okay.
too.
Yeah, I was like, because I was feeling a little anxious when I was testing, as I was like, wow, like, okay, but if you have this bad matchup into sus, who I specifically statted to like be like just barely on the edge of like, if you use the right weapons, like player or enemy phase into player phase with the expected carry at their expected levels, and they were a little bit stat screwed, you would probably need to finish with FA or another person. But then it was like, oh well, like I don't know who else is around me. Oh my gosh, am I gonna waste like 5 dragon stones? Oh, I don't know. So I was like, I don't want them to like worry about that, or like have that impact how cool the map design is. So I was like, let me just remove that anxiety and just take out the fog. I mean, yeah, I think I could have gone harder, but I just didn't have time. I literally was doing this the night before, Nate. I was doing this Friday night. I was like, oh my god, like what do I? And then like figuring out sus and the benchmarks and like going off of the expected carry stats and which weapons do I give him and like.
Procrastinators.
I was, dude, I was not procrastinating, man. I put like 30 hours of work into like the presentation and the whole production the week leading up to the race. So I was not procrastinating. So
Anything else for us to cover here?
I guess I don't know. Do chat have any more questions? Can we make Nino Lord? Sure.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess
Nino would actually be kind of broken as a Lord.
She would be. I mean, her stats are so crazy, actually, if you get her early enough, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And 1-2 range, hits res.
Yeah.
Right? I guess she can have trouble with bosses, but...
Yo, Jafar, Nino, that'd be hype, so...
Yeah, and also, like, Mecha already commended you for this, right? But some of the things that you spent a lot of effort designing, right? Like the final chapter change, was definitely like it played well, right?
Yeah.
I think that was probably the multi-edit glowing achievement in the Chaos Draft, right?
Thank you. Yeah, no,
maybe it wasn't like elegant, but like it definitely, some things that you want to do to change the meta are not going to be done with a single edit to the ROM.
Yeah.
Right. You're not going to enact like a large enough change to a meta to make it deserve the moniker of chaos mode.
Right.
Some changes can, and we made sure to hone in on those, but some of them are just like, yeah, shit units are so shit that you have to do a lot to make them not shit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Part
of that's just a game, right?
Yeah.
Not every game can be FE6 or Radiant Dawn.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, and I appreciate that. Like I think, like I do think that this has like is competitive for one of the most complex and interesting like draft races that we have. Like I think it's right up there with name anything, and I'll put this right next to it, honestly. And to quite like just like transparently and vulnerably, like I do think I am proud of the design work that went into this, and then also the implementation, which I appreciated your feedback into this and teamwork and decision making, and then but when I implemented stuff, it was kind of like I think I mostly did that solo, and I'm really proud about how all those decisions I made under like the time pressure of getting things out, how quick that was. Like it's, to me, it's very validating to be like, yes, I can design good maps and a good meta. Like I think I've proven I can do that through this experience. So
yeah. And one thing, by the way, that we never mentioned that I actually think deserves a little bit of praise too is figuring out how to change the objective to Battle Before Dawn, because changing to a kill 2 boss objective is way harder than changing to a single boss objective. That was
Pyrope. That was Pyrope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, I mean, shout out to you guys for figuring it out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But Battle Before Dawn is one of those examples of a chapter that's like so shit to start out with that you need to make multiple changes to even make it not shit. And then when you make those changes, it leads you down a rabbit hole of even more things that are like a little bit weird. Like, okay, now that you no longer have the RNG of Green Unit Jafar, are you allowed to use him?
Yeah.
Right. Like a question that I think no one actually considered. Or that if it was considered, that it was just assumed that Jafar would be free and it wouldn't be a problem. But like, if you have a free Jafar in Battle Before Dawn, that actually makes things just so much easier, to the point where, like, should you have a benefit for drafting him, right? Like, isn't that the point of making him not free? So,
yeah,
these are deep deep considerations.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I definitely appreciate that. I guess to end this on a positive note is I just thanks everyone for one attending this, but two everyone who played. Thank you for playing it. It did bring me a lot of joy to see people explore a puzzle that I made in collaboration with Dondon, and just actually enjoy it. Like that's what the whole point was, and I'm glad we got there, and I'm glad that people appreciate it in the end. So, thank you. Thank you for playing. I did have a meme plan to end the stream. I guess I should still do it. How do I do this actually? All right, let's start the raid. You gotta start the raid. Or wait, like it actually goes pretty quickly, I think. So. Okay, here we go. This is how you end it. This is how you end. Starting the raid. Alright, let's see the 07s in the chat. I want to see a horse in 07. When we raid Tanuki, we're going to raid and we're going to do horse emojis and 07s. Salute. Good night, sweet Hans. And may a flight of angels sing thee to thy rest.
You got destroyed.
Adios, everyone. We'll see you later.
See ya.